We're sitting in front of Junt's SNES collection. You've had this collection since the early 2000s?
Yeah, early 2000s, like 2003 is when I started collecting, and then kind of wound down the end of the 2000s.
And it was never exhibited anywhere?
Nope.
It was always in storage?
Yeah, from the day I bought it, actually, I was packing it into containers and putting it away. I mean, this is just a piece of the collection, and you can see it takes up a lot of room and is quite an impressive display.
It was work to bring it over to our studio, create a set out of it. There's not only a tremendous number of games, but there's also some obscure peripherals.
Yes.
Do you have stats on the collection?
So for US games, I have 624 individual cards. Of those, 527 are unique, and that's 74% of all Super Nintendo USA releases. I have about 140 Japanese games, about 15 or 20 European games from the UK mostly.
Why Super Nintendo?
Super Nintendo for me was kind of the point in my video gaming life that was the most nostalgic. Final Fantasy II, games like Super Mario World, all the RPGs I played were all mostly on the Super Nintendo. I had the NES growing up too, but by the time that I was a teenager and I was playing the most video games, it was definitely with the Super Nintendo. And also, when I had the Nintendo, I only really had 4 games because games were very expensive.
When the Nintendo 64 era came along, you kind of fell off a little?
No, I switched to PlayStation, which was a good platform and had some games I enjoy, but the games were never quite as like magical and really well put together on the PlayStation as they were on the Super Nintendo. In the early 2000s, there was a little bit of interest in resurgence, but not much yet. Games like Chrono Trigger that were very expensive, but most games were still pretty cheap. Even things that were pretty uncommon.
Where were you finding them?
eBay. I have been using eBay basically since it started.
What about Funko Land?
Funko Land was another big one.
This is how most stores feel about buying your old video games. This is how we feel. Funcoland, more video games than anybody else at half the price.
The lifespan of the Super NES was something like 91 to like 96 or so.
Yeah, it was in that range.
And then in the early 2000s, it was considered retro video games, but not like 20 years ago.
Yeah, and emulators were pretty good around that time, not great. Not many people were into emulation as a thing.
Right.
So most people still wanted to play on physical carts at that point.
And they probably had their systems ready to go.
Yeah, they still had their system.
And yet the demand wasn't there because it wasn't considered collector's items yet.
Yeah.
You were collecting before a lot of people were collecting the Super Nintendo.
That's right.
If you had to buy this collection from scratch today.
Yeah, I don't think I would.
Yeah.
It would be a huge financial undertaking. It would probably be in the $35,000 to $40,000 range.
And what would you guess you paid in total? Rough estimate.
Probably $4,000 or $5,000.
Around the time I met you, which was like 2000, you were developing your own Super Nintendo RPG.
Yes.
Or a Super Nintendo
style. Well, I had always loved RPGs, right? And it had been a long-running side project to make a game. I used to make these little smiley games that had a little smiley character that moved around the screen. That kind of died, and then I picked up another one that kind of died. And then I found this platform that's called RPG Maker, and it is like the embodiment of Super Nintendo. It came with a big graphics library that looks like it's right off the Super Nintendo. Came with these really great pre-composed MIDI files that sound exactly like a Super Nintendo. And then I went and expanded that. I added some additional features to it with scripting, and I also wrote some of my own music for it. The beauty of that software was that you could just kind of sit down with it, and there was a lot of things you could do without having to know any programming at all. You could make a pretty fun game with the stock resources. I wrote the music using Cakewalk, which is what I used to write all my music at the time.
Which never was finished.
No, not at all. Not at all. Making any game is a huge undertaking, right? And eventually,
what was it called?
Forthrightly Through the Twilight. You can put it as a download. The installation process is slightly laborious, but you can do it. I can write you instructions.
All right, so we've got tube TVs.
We've got tube TVs.
We've got peripherals. We've got games.
So many. I have 624 individual cards, 74% of all Super Nintendo USA releases.
There's also some obscure peripherals.
11, 12, 13, 14. One of the things I always liked to get was ridiculous and crazy controllers. Yeah, this looks like Harvest Moon. 6 Space Invaders games. Super Noah's Ark 3D. These are super collectible nowadays. I think it's like a Game Genie.
JuntSNES, JuntSNES.
JuntSNES.
Jon, one of the things that really astounds me about this collection is the number of Super Nintendo consoles, individual units that you have.
It's true, I do have a lot. We've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
You have 5 Super Nintendos?
Oh, but wait, I have that one there, there's 6.
Oh.
There's a sealed one up there, that's 7.
Oh, yeah.
And then there's one more here, so that's 8.
Why would you need 8 Super Nintendos? Wait, I think there might be more.
You think there's more?
Are there more over there, guys?
You think there's more Super Nintendos? Oh no. Oh, this.
Oh, so
Okay. 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14.
So this is it, right?
15, 16, 17, 18.
Oh, only 18 then.
Only-
Wait, there's more?
19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, and I've got this one here, which is 26. So it looks like about 26.
Wait, and a half.
And a half. 26 and a half Super Nintendos.
Gentlemen, is that all of them? Oh, you found the bottom
At the
half?
bottom.
Officially 27? Well, this is just a shell.
Yeah. So I'm gonna call it at 26. The thing is, Frankie, I have no idea how many work, if at all.
How did this happen? Because it's not like each of them is a snowflake.
No, when you're buying stuff on eBay, as I did, sometimes you come across lots, and lots were the key to building a collection. You don't buy things one at a time, the shipping's gonna kill you. Actually, I bought several lots from this one guy who clearly what he was doing was he was refurbishing Super Nintendos. But he had a bunch that were questionable, or he was shutting down his business. I don't remember exactly what it was. So I bought from him a bunch of Super Nintendos, a bunch of Super Nintendo parts, a bunch of controllers, and then a bunch of controller parts. I never got through the process of actually figuring out what's wrong with these, if anything.
I'm still confused. Why buy more Super Nintendos?
The bulk of the faded color ones came in a lot for about $9 a piece.
So let's see if we can at least first identify which of them are not the standard US.
Yes.
So I see a different one here.
Yeah, that's a Super Nintendo Junior. That came late in the Super Nintendo's life. I have two of those. That's one of them right there. I also have a sealed one, which we're not going to open today. It's a cost-reduced Super Nintendo. It has a lot more simplicity in it. It actually removes the S-video capability from your Super Nintendo.
What is this?
So this is a UK
How?
Super Nintendo.
Oh.
Yep. This is how they looked in the UK and everywhere else in the world, basically, except the US. And they did this for a very specific reason, because they wanted to have 3 regions of cartridge. Japanese region, they had the US. Those cartridges use the same piracy technology, but they are physically incompatible. You can't put one cartridge into the other system, they won't fit. The UK ones will fit in the Japanese, but actually have a different piracy chip so that you can't take a Japanese game and use it in a European console. This is a Japanese Nintendo Super Famicom, and this one is actually extra special because it has a Satellaview on the bottom. In Japan, they actually had a satellite that would broadcast down content for your Super Nintendo. They would publish games, and because it wasn't bi-directional, it was unidirectional, you just would power on your Super Nintendo at a certain time of day, and it would receive a new game into it that you could then play for that
Whoa.
week. It was a pretty cool system.
Would you call that early DLC?
It was early DLC. You
Or-
played a subscription and you bought the hardware, which was pretty expensive. Of course, now the hardware is completely useless because the service is long ended.
Not unlike the Nintendo Direct with the Switch now, where once a month you get a few more retro games.
It's the same idea. It would have really been cool in the US too. It's actually the only licensed device to take use of the expansion port on the bottom of your Super Nintendo that's in the back here. It's the only one that plugs into that. All US Super Nintendos have it. The mini one does not. It was removed for cost savings.
So what about the discoloration? It seems like most people's retro Super Nintendos go yellow after a while.
So in the US, there was a regulation from the 80s in which plastic had to be fire retardant and treated with fire retardant chemicals, because otherwise plastic kind of burns, especially for children's toys, had to be treated. It turned out that the chemical that they added over time ended up reacting with the plastic and caused the color to change, but only for certain batches of parts, specifically the tops and the bottoms, very rarely the other cartridge parts. So if we look at a few here, they basically come in 3 colors.
Crap yellow.
Crap yellow top and bottom, and have a perfectly clean top, crap top, but good bottom.
Which I've been accused of having.
And you've got your ones that didn't fade at all. Most of these ones that I have were already faded at the time I purchased them, because that chemical reaction took about 3 or 4 years to really take place. There is a chemical treatment you can do to them to kind of bring them back. It's a chemical called Retrobrite, but I don't really see the point because
No.
it just fades again over time.
These aren't exactly valuable in your collection.
No, these are just kind of like the filler bulk, just like the 150 sports games I have. They're bulk to bulk up the size of the collection.
Right. How many do we think actually work?
Well, we're going to take out the Japanese one because I don't have the power adapter for that one here. I'm going to guess we can probably get 10 to work.
What complicates it is that the cartridges themselves sometimes don't play great.
Yeah, Zach actually donated this to the collection. This is a third-party cartridge cleaning system, and this one's actually a little better than the Nintendo official one. We're gonna need to probably clean some of these, but I know that some of these have another problem, and we're not gonna be able to fix it today, but I do want to talk about it because it is a major, serious Nintendo problem. Broken power connectors. The power connectors broke way too easily, specifically the center of them. This is the good one down here with the little plastic nub in the center. This one, it's broken. For a long time, Frankie, that problem was death for a Super Nintendo. Because Super Nintendos have become more rare and we're more interested in preserving them, this is a replacement power connector. I bought 10 of them. We're not gonna do this today, but in the future, I might be able to bring back some of these Super Nintendos by replacing their power connectors with new ones. In the Swansea Mall, we talked about it, there was the Nintendo kiosk.
Right at the top of those stairs right there, Frank, it's long gone. Used to be the World of Nintendo Mall kiosk. And I would spend many hours standing in front of the Super Nintendo, playing it right there.
And they did have, actually, one of the test cartridges, the one that I have running right here. And they would test your controllers. You could bring in your deck to have them test it. Basic service. They wouldn't repair anything. They could just tell you if it was defective, then they could ship it out. Well, we better get started.
We
here
got a lot of
we
work
got a
to
lot to go through. We know that this one's working, right?
So we'll have a working pile and a non-working pile.
Yes. No dice. Let's try to clean it. There's still original cleaning fluid from this kit that is not dried out yet. So I'm putting a couple drops on the thing. It has a cartridge connector. You just put it in and rub it up and down, and you're actually cleaning the connector inside.
It's meant to bring up with it some dust and some crap.
And you can actually see, if you look in there, how dirty it is from
A couple of cleanings.
a couple of cleanings. Actually, it got a lot dirtier cleaning this Super Nintendo.
Well, these have been in a trash pile.
And there we go. Hey, one for the working pile. Okay, we got another one here. This one's got a broken power connector, but sometimes if you're really careful, you can balance it in there, so we're gonna give that a try. Nope, no power at all. This one is a dud. Okay, power's on, probably needs a cleaning. Hey! This one's got some serious kid grime.
Ugh, what could it even be?
Bubble gum up here.
Ah!
Hey! Another one. Hey!
If you'd like to buy a SNES off of Junt,
You can't. It's dead.
it's dead.
Powered on, but no signal.
So this one actually has Super Power Club stickers on it.
does. Let's see if it works.
Hey!
Hey! Whoa. This one does power on, but clearly has some kind of serious electronic problem. It's got a bad video port, is what it's got.
Oh, there you go.
I think we call it a worker.
'Cause all you'd have to do is flick it.
This one is filthy. Ew.
Ew, what's on it?
I don't know. It's so gross.
Marshmallows.
Nothing powering on even.
Yeah. It's covered in filth and it's not powered on. Would anybody like to buy that off of Junt?
$90.
No, it's candy, Ned. Yes.
Hey, it worked.
Hey.
One of the ways you can tell the age of a Super Nintendo is by what kind of sticker is on the back. So if you have the red and white sticker, that's an early Super Nintendo. The gray sticker, which came later on, is a later one. You can see that this one has the regulatory information kind of carved into the plastic of the case, and also the serial number has a barcode so they could scan it to make sure you weren't stealing it. Hey! You tap it, and it's super unreliable.
We'd want to put it on a stable table.
No power. Dead.
Dead.
Right out of the
Hey.
box.
Common misconception. The more yellow it is, the more it works.
Working just fine.
Hi-oh. I have to be honest.
Yep.
The cleaning cartridge home screen doesn't make me as excited as like.
Well, really, all you get is the ding of the Nintendo. No power. Dead.
Most of these are power issues.
Yeah, and that's why I bought 10 of these to replace you on units. I wonder if I bought enough. No power on this baby. I'm gonna have a plethora of Super Nintendos once we finish.
Oh, good. We'll put one in every, house in the town, but I will not sell any of them.
I can't even plug in the connector. This is a no-go.
What happened?
The connector is totally ruined.
Toast.
Toast.
Let me see what this thing looks like.
It's all bent out.
Whoa, it's all f***ed.
Yeah. Thank you for that expert analysis, Frankie. No power. We gotta look at this boxed one, right? We got 2 on the shelves, but I don't know, do we want to risk it? Pulling them off the displays?
Yeah.
All right, so let's try this one, and then we're gonna look at that one that I have all in box there.
Clean.
Clean it. This cleaning kit is getting more action than it has in the past 10 years.
I'm ready to play.
There we go.
All right.
Look at how well that cleaning kit works. Even though you cannot buy them anymore, you haven't been able to buy them for probably 15 years.
It seems to me like it's essential. Don't you feel like people always blame the cartridge first?
They do, and as we've seen a lot of the time here, it is the Super Nintendo that's to blame. This is a complete Super Nintendo, Frankie, with original accessories and manual. The original documentation packet and instruction manual. But we will take it out and let's test it.
A new rock bottom for our viewers, watching people just test Nintendos.
It needs a cleaning.
But it's brand new from the store.
That's all the ones we're gonna test.
Is it time for a total count?
It is.
2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 working Super Nintendos.
And did you count this one
And
too?
we know this one works over here.
Yep.
You have 12 working Super Nintendos. Congratulations, Jon Hunt. You're today's winner.
Wow!
I'm sorry to report. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 broken Super Nintendos. But that's just enough for your replacement powers.
It is!
Did you want to talk about the manual?
It is kind of cool. Nintendo loved stuff like this. And inside, it offers you a free issue of Nintendo Power, which at the time, man. And you got your Super Power Club cards. I had some of those.
Nintendo Power was a way to play video games when you were away from your video games.
Yep. Join now and get your free Mario Mania Player's Guide, which we do actually have right here on one of the shelves. We do have a regulatory manual. Do not use with a rear projection television. Also warns you about epilepsy and gives you the patent information for the Super Nintendo. And I always love this. They used to put so many posters. This is a Star Fox poster. This was a late Super Nintendo.
And they used like actual like stuffed animals or something?
Yes, either that or it's just a really well done art. This game was packed in with Mario All-Stars. And on the back it has cool information and promoting a bunch of games, including some of the original titles like Pilot Wings and Super Mario World, which were launch titles.
The aforementioned Mario Mania
Yes,
Player's
you would
Guide.
get this as a really nice book. All these Nintendo published books were really nice, really durable, just tons of information about Super Mario World. And I really need to add this book to my collection. This is Frankie's. This actually isn't in my collection. But you can see every level you would get an indicator about where things are, where to go, where the special things were, where all the Yoshi coins were, so you could collect them all.
For all Mario games.
For all of them.
Up to that point.
One more important poster, which we'd be remiss not to mention, is the How to Put Together poster.
Did they expect you to hang that up in your room or something?
It's a dual function. On this
Yeah.
side, you get a great Nintendo advertisement. And if you have a regular Nintendo, how do you wire it in with your Super Nintendo to get both at the same time?
That's still the thing, is like trying to make an entertainment setup that makes it easy to switch between all consoles. At some point,
It's tough.
it just becomes untenable and
tough.
it can't be done.
Frankie, today we're talking about one of the rarest pieces in my Super Nintendo collection, the M.A.C.S gun. We're actually gonna try to use this today. Now, I have never plugged this in. Talk about the game as well, which is another rare component.
Junt with a gun.
Junt with a gun, a rare sight indeed, with the Super Nintendo cable on it.
Yeah, it does disarm.
I think it's actually a real, it's a Jagger, what is it? I should look it up.
Gun.
Jagger AP74. It's mechanically disabled, but it is actually a real gun. The trigger mechanism is completely altered for this custom application because it triggers the Nintendo controller. It's got a little sensor inside, and we've got our light pipe up here. What that does is you shoot it at your little TV.
Yep.
That senses the position of where you are on the TV and determines where you're shooting.
It's like when a hick is irritated by what he's seeing on the news.
Yes.
He's like, hell with it!
This was actually one of the last things I bought because these, even at the time, didn't come up very often at all.
How'd you even know of its existence?
So there was this famous article in Nintendo Power that actually shows the gun and shows someone in the military shooting it. From there, it became kind of a legendary accessory. After these were used for their designated purposes, they ended up in Army surplus. At the time that I bought this one, it was a really rare thing on eBay, and I paid a lot of money for it. For the gun, it was about $600. Maybe there's 100 total that were ever made, and a lot of them were probably destroyed.
This is your crown jewel.
This is one of the crown jewels of the collection, for sure. When I posted our set on Reddit, someone actually commented from the military services in which they said they had actually used one.
Whoa.
And they said it sucked. They said it was incredibly difficult to get the accuracy right, even when it was properly calibrated.
Just because something is rare does not mean it's good.
That's right, absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe the reason it's rare is because they threw most of them out because they didn't work.
Right.
There were several custom cartridges, and this is the one that I have. And this was also a big expense. I think this was around $350. This is one of the rarest Super Nintendo cartridges, probably in the hundreds in terms of total quantity.
What does it say?
It says M.A.C.S, which is Multi-Purpose Arcade Combat Simulator, version 1.1e, copyright 1993, Sculptured Software Incorporated.
The military went to Nintendo and said, can you help us with like virtual training? And then Nintendo hired Sculptured Software.
That's right.
To develop.
Who made a bunch of games.
And then who do you think made the gun? Just Nintendo?
I think some company must have, but I have no idea which company.
I wonder why outside of Nintendo Power, Nintendo didn't try to like market this more, because they're like, not only are we a video game, but we're helping people kill.
I think that there was a bit of a disconnect between Nintendo's messaging at the time, which was really pro kids, kid focused, especially around that time.
And
and this, which is basically, yeah.
Because I don't see no orange cap on the end.
No, there should be an orange cap on it.
Well, I guess it'd be weird if like actual military guys were playing with a gun that had an orange cap on it. Oh yeah, there's a small orange doodle.
Yeah, it's pretty far down though.
Yeah. You think there's public paperwork that shows that Nintendo was involved?
This is a licensed Super Nintendo game. This isn't like an off-brand. Again, probably one of the rarest licensed games there is. Also on the back here, we have a sticker, Omega Training Group Incorporated. I wonder if they were the ones who actually put the guns together.
This was the world, or in this case the military, kind of too hopeful about the state of where we were with video games and VR.
Yes.
They were kind of like, well, if you can interact with a TV screen,
yeah,
you can do it all. I mean, I'm sure now we have pretty good simulators.
Probably. I really don't know. This was not seen as a particularly effective training device. It was ahead of its time.
Well, I kind of want to be like, did you guys ever play a Super Nintendo game? Have you noticed that it's not 3D? Like Mario Kart is pretty good with its auto scaling, and that's about where we're at right now.
Yeah, this was before the time of 3D. This was 1993, which was even pretty early in the Super Nintendo's life.
All right, well, look, I want to play this thing.
We're gonna give it a try. It could be completely dead. I have no idea.
Well, we're gonna find out.
We're gonna find out.
All right, so we've got the game set up.
We got it set up, and the cartridge is running.
We've invited our friend Keith onto the show. Keith, also a Super Nintendo enthusiast?
Yeah, enthusiast.
We grew up together, and you're kind of part of my mental image of childhood and video games.
Yeah, absolutely.
And you're a big gamer to this day.
Till this day.
Yes.
Yeah, it says pull the trigger to continue.
Yes.
Basic rifle marksmanship training, pull trigger to continue.
Okay. You're getting a little slideshow on
how to hold a gun.
Yeah,
I have never in my life fired a real gun, and this is heavy like a real gun.
So you should follow the instructions.
Yeah, follow the steady position, aiming,
all right,
breath control, trigger squeeze.
That's a hip shot. You don't want to do that.
First 3 shots establish 0, aim at center of mass.
And what's the recoil?
Prepare to fire.
Prepare to fire.
Are you prepared?
Assume a supported position, fire 1 shot per target. Targets are untimed. Okay. Invalid shot group, try again, light pen, adjustment may be required. Light pen?
Light pen, this is the light pen. Invalid shot group, try
What does
again.
that mean?
It means you're completely missing the targets, I think. Right?
Somebody else try it.
All right.
Prepare to fire.
It sort of reminds me of, like the military like invests in things like Second Life. Like these immature technologies where it's like maybe...
Somebody thought this was a really good idea.
Invalid shot.
Oh.
It's not possible.
Keith was trying the old duck hunt thing.
You can't do it.
Do you want to try it? Invalid shot.
And I thought my aim was pretty good. As you move it around, it's doing that flashing edges thing.
Yeah.
It's finding the position of the thing. Consider the fact that this was designed to be done with a 9-inch TV. And these targets are already tiny. So the thing that's surprising me the most actually is
how the JFK thing was covered up the way it was.
this how accurate this would have had to be.
It does not seem like a good training tool.
No.
I can't say that it continued into the next generation consoles.
No.
It doesn't give you any kind of indication like where you're shooting
It
at all.
just sucks.
Any kind of light pipe game, normally you shoot and it shows you where you shot.
Yeah.
This doesn't show you at all. You don't know until you get invalid shot group, try again.
No.
I can't imagine anything more frustrating. Maybe it's just a badly designed game to begin with.
What's the coming?
Maybe I paid $1,000 in 2008 for a piece of junk.
Confirmed.
It gives us some additional options like easy shot group. I think we should have an easy shot group.
Yes, please.
You have options for wind, and you can also specify the wind direction. But there's an option to calibrate the light pen, so maybe we should do that. So aim at the blue cross and pull the trigger, Keith.
Aiming at the blue cross.
What the hell's going on?
I think it's moving live,
Yeah,
is it?
yeah,
it's live.
it's live.
Oh my God, it's
if I'm in-
so
if I'm
jittery.
Maybe you're too close.
Oh, that's it.
Ah, we were a little too close.
All right, so let's try a new game.
And the thing is, why don't they just put the trigger on the screen to show where you shot? Frankie, you want to give it one more go?
One more
Now
try.
that we can go back to that menu. Oh, you gotta be so accurate. Invalid shot group.
Do you want to try it?
We're gonna have Matt have a try here.
Prepare to fire.
Invalid shot group in 3 shots. 2 shots. 1 shot. Invalid shot group. All right.
All right.
I think we've got it. I think we've tried our best.
Well, that kind of sucked.
I don't think it sucked at all. We figured out that the gun actually works. We went to the calibration screen so that the light pen even works. I'm pretty happy with this.
Yeah, this is we couldn't even play it accurately once.
No, but that was what the military said too. Frankie, when I was building my collection, one of the things I always liked to get was ridiculous and crazy controllers. And we've got some weirdos, let me tell you here.
Keith, Frankie.
And me, of course. I'm the biggest weirdo in the room. This is actually my favorite Super Nintendo controller. This is a UK one. This isn't very special, it's just special to me. It's Super Nintendo marked, but it's got the 4 color buttons, and I love that styling. This has the darker gray plastic of the UK Super Nintendo, and of course you can use this on anyone, but I just love those color buttons. I think they're just the bee's knees. Did you know all the British games are actually slower than the US games? Because it's 60 hertz in the US, it's 50 over there. In order to sync up with the TV, they just made all the games slower, so everything's a little easier in Britain. Let's start right down the end there, Frankie, and we're gonna try these all out too. This is a Super Game Boy controller. This was designed to play with your Super Game Boy to give you the kind of aesthetic of a Game Boy.
So they were like, if the Super Nintendo controller isn't good enough, which it totally is,
Yeah.
play with a controller that kind of looks like a Game Boy, but has way more buttons.
This controller doesn't have an L and R button. In the Super Game Boy, those actually had special functions. L was mute, R was window, and then you had the color and the speed. And they actually put the buttons in a way that's easy to press them. So if you were a super fan of the Super Game Boy, this would be the controller for you. And of course your A, B button, and even a little fake speaker grill. You can use it as a regular controller. It's got the A, B, X, Y in the right positions. You can switch back and forth, Super Game Boy or Super Famicom. I don't think this one would be too bad to play with.
Doesn't
guess
look
so.
like it'd be as comfortable as Super Nintendo.
It's a little squarish and dumpy. Keith, give it a try.
I mean, it's the type of thing that if I got it as a kid, I'd love it because I wanted to love it because
Yes.
someone bought it for me. I spent my
Yeah.
allowance on it.
This was actually the only one that was styled in any way to be like something else. Nowadays, we have that all over the place.
One that people really enjoy is the Game Boy SP that looks like an NES controller.
Yes, yep. So this is an interesting one. This is a Super SN Pad Pro. And this was a third-party controller that was released. And this one is actually brand new. It has never been taken out of its box, and we're gonna take it out today.
You figured the seal's already broken, you're okay opening the box.
Yeah, well, I actually broke the seal today. I thought it was a fake seal. It was an accident. It had a little damage to the seal right here, and I thought this happened a lot when I bought my collection, is people would take things that were in pretty good shape, box them up, seal them, but this was actually an original seal. Doesn't really matter too much. It's not that rare.
Slight detour on seals. The first DVD we made of our first movie, we decided to seal them,
Yep.
and we put them in the little bags, and then you blow dried them.
Did we really?
To seal them, yeah. You set this all up for us.
It was shrink film.
Yeah, shrink
Okay.
film. Probably like a third of the people said that their DVDs didn't play.
because we right inside there's a packing date here, 21 December 1992. Where were you 21 December 1992?
I was 6.
You were 6? Did you
Yeah.
have a Super Nintendo at that time?
I probably did have a Super Nintendo at the time.
And this is the first time it's been out of its box since 1992. This is a really
That's cool
cool
looking.
controller. It's got your transparent styling from the 90s.
That was the thing back then, was like, want to see through it, want to see all the bits.
You
And
know,
I
I
actually love
still like that look.
Really?
The D-pad is a little,
It's a little weird.
it's a little weird.
We should actually give this one a try out, see how the feel actually is.
What's all these switches?
So you can have off, which is just you press, semi-auto, which is automatic when you press it, hold it down, and auto, which it just hits continuously. Let's take a quick look at that next one right up the line, Frankie.
This one is one of the funkier ones.
This is a NTT data pad. The only thing I can seem to find on it is talking about how it was for the NTT data modem for the Super Nintendo, which was a modem in Japan which lets you call into services and browse it on your Super Nintendo.
The NDK-10 controller works like an ordinary controller. 16-bit extra clock cycles are required to retrieve the additional button bits.
I think that the idea was you could type in phone numbers and jump to references very quickly and easily. It is pretty cool to just have so many extra buttons.
The main buttons and the D-pad are kind of spaced a little bit further from the normal Super Nintendo. Is that a little uncomfortable?
Actually, for me, it's kind of comfy.
I think that the Wii nunchuck kind of proved that like distance from each other isn't really something
That's true. It's actually not that bad.
No.
I do have a couple of these different 5-player adapters. This is one of the most famous one. This is the Hudson Super Multitabs. And this goes in controller port 2, and then you hook up to 4 other controllers. I know some Hudson games support 4 controllers, so we'll definitely have to give that a try. And then we've got 2 different versions of the Tribal Tap. They all have switches that let you select between 1 and 2 if you want the 2-player or all the way to 5 players. And finally, we have this Super 5-Play, also in its original box. Again, the selection, 3 to 5 players or 2 players.
Did the Super Nintendo, when it was built, know that you could maybe have up to 5 controllers, or was this done like on a software level? How does it know that Y button press is for Y1 and not Y5?
What it actually does is it actually cycles through the controllers really fast and reads them. It's continuously strobing the controllers over and over again. You actually are getting 1/4 of the response time out of these controllers.
Okay.
I wonder if we'll feel it.
Yeah, we'll have to give it a try and see. Next, we've got this wacky one. It is really uncomfortable.
Like, I'd have to think this was comfortable.
I don't know the point of it.
I mean, it's got this nice hand grip on this side, which is cool.
To give you extra control. You have to twist your whole hand for the
get it
button
around.
part. You have to twist your wrist.
I could imagine maybe like this in player 1 and another thing in player 2, and then trying to give you some sort of immersive.
Some kind of immersive.
Some kind of immersive. Imagine trying to play like Super Metroid. I gotta now target and I gotta shoot my super missile.
The next one I want to talk about, this is just the big brother of this one down the bottom. This is the SN Pro Pad, and this is the SN Program Pad. This one you can actually program in up to 3 functions that you program into the controller, and then it can execute that move.
You could have it slightly play some of the game for you.
You totally can. I remember Gary had one of these, my friend Gary. We used to actually program in Mortal Kombat moves.
Can you hotkey with this?
Yeah, you get 3 hotkeys.
That's amazing, so you can always get your fatality on.
I've got a couple of these really weird devices. This one, you plug it in, and then you plug a controller in the front, and then you can add functions to your controller. You can auto, you can steer, thrash, pro, clone, or turbo. And you have a reset button and a slow button. And they have this for multiple platforms. They had it for Genesis and Super Nintendo. Next one I have is this ASCII Turbo File Twin. I think this is a Japanese one. I think this has something to do with saving games. This STF button, and then you can change it to 5 other positions and then a protect on and off. So it seems like a saving backup device that runs via the controller. Just kind of an interesting idea. Finally, this is a new in box, and the box is falling apart because it's 30 years old. Jet Fighter controller, and this is for both Super Nintendo and Sega Genesis, and this is not a licensed controller. It clearly says for worldwide use.
For when you want your controller experience to just be absurd.
It is an utterly ridiculous controller.
It advertises comfortable space-age grip action.
I remember this controller was pretty expensive because it was pretty rare. It comes with a nice selection of stickers too, including the numbers 0 to 9 repeated twice. 2 Jet Fighter stickers.
If you wanted your call sign to be like Mobius 1.
And it's got 3 stickers with the manufacturer name, which is definitely what I want on my Jet Fighter.
I love it's in the shape of like a stealth bomber, and it's like, here's lightning bolts to decorate it with.
It's time to give some of these a try, don't you think?
Give them their due. So I've decided to play with this twisty one. We've decided that Mario Kart for Super Nintendo is what we're gonna play. I'll be Toad. I'm very confused by LNR being part of
It's gonna be
part of the button set.
Oh geez.
That's me.
It's me. Oh wait a minute, what's this down the bottom? Hold on. There, I found it.
Mine is, I hate to say it, it's not that bad.
Actually, this control's playing really nice.
Well, okay, here's one problem, Keith. I have to use my index finger to use LNR. How do you relinquish items? Okay, yeah, it sucks.
Well, the both of you, first and second place.
This one meanwhile is really nice, actually. It has a great feel. The buttons are working excellently. Frank is winning. It's not fair.
Why am I winning with this controller? Shame on you. Do you want to try this thing?
Yeah, sure.
I'm gonna swap over to another one. This is the number pad. Whoa.
Luigi's just hopping.
It's much harder to control Luigi when he's constantly jumping.
It feels in character to me.
And I'm sure that's a function of the fact that this controller is supposed to be read totally differently than we're reading it.
What are you supposed to do to make it work properly?
I think it's just not designed for this game at all. And I can't attain maximum speed when in full jump either. None of the buttons actually do anything. I can't use items at all.
So you're pressing every other of the 27 buttons on that thing.
I'm really floundering over here with this jump-based
you're doing
controller.
okay.
Well, look, I'm not even gonna get there. I'm in the ocean. I like that I'm still continuously just jumping.
Okay, 2 new controllers, please.
2 new controllers. We should definitely try the fighter pad. I'm actually gonna put a controller into this thing. This is that box that supposedly will modify your controller to add cool functions.
Imagine getting that for Christmas. I guess you'd probably love it.
It beeps.
It's beep. Auto, steer, thrash, pro, reset.
It's certainly making some fun
Does that
sounds.
have a function, or is that just lighting
It's
up?
just lighting.
That's not like an infrared.
This is lighting up on the controller strobe signal, which is really fun. So every time it's polling the controller, it's actually flashing.
It's a better toy than it is a controller.
All right, Keith, we've got Contra 3 Alien Wars. I've got my regular controller through this ridiculous device that we don't quite understand.
Whoa, I'm already bombing stuff.
This thing's talking.
Oh, God.
What is going on?
Turbo is on. I'm going to change this to thrash.
Okay.
Because it moved over to steer. It went back
No,
to
it's
steer.
definitely me who's causing this.
There must be another function button up the top. I think it's a problem with the turbo switch. Okay, I think the switch is just a little flaky in its old days.
Oh, I'm not so sure.
John, is your controller strange with
It
this
seems
hookup?
perfectly normal. Change an option, Keith.
All right, we're going to put you on pro.
Nothing.
Nothing new happened.
Everything keeps moving
I'm already
back to
gone.
steer.
What the hell is this thing? It seems to have absolutely no effect.
It feels all right. I mean, I'm doing okay.
The program pad. It looks like it has a little LCD display, too.
It does.
Reminds me of Dreamcast.
The little Tamagotchi thing.
Yeah, a little Chow from
Yeah.
Sonic.
So is it time to play a 5-player game?
Yes. Ready? 4 players. Here we go. I don't know how to play this game at all.
It's actually working.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is.
Oh, you pick up another. This is actually kind of fun.
Oh, you can hurt yourself.
Oh,
so you gotta,
yeah, don't hurt yourself.
You gotta steer clear of your own bomb. So I'm just dead, I guess. Forgive me if there's a lot of Super Bomberman people out there. Apparently none of us are Super Bomber men.
A key strategy of this game is getting out of the way of the explosion. Does it feel pretty good?
Yes,
It feels good.
it feels normal. And this Super Game Boy one, which I'm now playing with, it was fine.
This game's pretty cool.
All right, well, that's it.
So what did we learn? There's a lot of controllers and they're all really weird.
And you can totally just buy normal controllers. Given that there are 4-player games out there and we had fun playing one, maybe picking up a multi-tap wouldn't be such a bad idea.
This was a lot of fun. I've never used one before. It worked really well and that game was pretty fun. Frankie, when you've got a collection as big as mine, you've got some things that are kind of rare, kind of unusual. 6 different items that I want to show you today, and you, Keith.
I guess.
The people at home, we want to show them too, maybe.
We did light the entire thing and film it with several cameras. If it was just us, we wouldn't bother with all that trouble.
No.
This is how you have private conversations. Yeah.
So what these are, there were a few different ones of these, and I should have bought more, because now they are absurdly rare. Inside there are 6 Space Invaders games. I did buy 2 sealed cases of these that still have their intact tape across the top.
The franchise that Atari made famous.
There was a Super Nintendo game. We can pull it up.
Do you want to talk about this cartridge you have that loads up all the games?
It's called the SD to SNES, and you put a little flash card in the top, and you can load it up with ROMs and just play them whenever you want. And since I've gotten it, I play a whole lot more Super Nintendo. It can emulate almost all of the special chips in cartridges, which means games like Star Fox, you can actually play. It's called Space Invaders, I think. Yeah. There's 12 copies, 12 sealed copies that have not seen the light of day since they left the Nintendo factory. It's pretty basic, huh?
Just laughing at the art of the guy. That's not what I think of when I think Space Invaders.
It is just Space Invaders. Not necessarily super interesting because they're sealed, and I'm not going to open them up.
You have 2 boxes.
Keith, I know.
He doesn't want you to keep talking about those boxes. Because he feels like the longer he dwells on the boxes, the longer we're going to be like, just open one.
I was debating saying the audience wants to see the inside.
They don't. It just looks like 6 super. I have a sealed Space Invaders cartridge somewhere around here.
Why are they in this kind of box?
When it was shipped to a store, they would have received these.
It doesn't seem like something that would be that sought after in a collection, though.
Nobody kept these boxes. So right now on eBay, There is one of just the cardboard box is $199.
Really?
I think I could get at least $150, $200 a piece for them.
So if enough people like, comment, and subscribe, you could probably open up a box and buy a new one.
Very unlikely, Keith. If this video right here, if it gets 250,000 views, 250,000, I will open one.
All right.
All right? All
It's
right?
on.
You get me 250,000 views, I'll sacrifice a piece of my collection to make it basically worthless.
Some of this precious tape.
We're gonna reseal it afterwards.
But now we're going to move on to something that's a little more interesting. This is my copy of Super Noah's Ark 3D. This is the only widely distributed, non-licensed Super Nintendo game. You have to hook another game onto it to make it work.
Whoa. Lock-on technology?
Lock-on technology. So that the security chip in a normal Super Nintendo cartridge could be accessed through it. It won't go without a game. And you can see it almost completely disappears into the Super Nintendo when it's in.
It's hiding out.
Yeah.
Like, I'm not illegal.
I'm like, oh, I'm an adult.
Yeah, it is very Little Rascals.
Yeah. The thing that actually makes this so rare is the fact that it's complete in box. This one's in really good shape.
They put more effort into the manual than the game. I like how it tells you Ginny the Giraffe, Carrie the Kangaroo.
Oh, yeah.
Jesus the Savior.
Jesus the Savior. Super launches, the feed launches.
I would never expect a religious game to have launchers.
This is based on the Wolfenstein 3D cartridge. But they did actually license the code from the company, basically a mod for Wolfenstein 3D, that you're shooting mean animals on the Ark.
With a slingshot.
That actually feeds them a pellet which puts them to sleep, is the idea.
It is kind of a weird, like, sequel concept to the Noah's Ark story.
Yeah.
Which is like, well, once he's actually on the Ark, you don't think that every animal behaved, did you?
No, he had...
You had to run around and slingshot the hell out of them.
I think you could play this with the mouse, too. That's kind of crazy. We'll be out of the Ark in 6 days. The animals are a tad bit restless now.
Yeah, so this is fan fiction, religious fan fiction.
Religious fan fiction. Oh, I'm already dying. Oh, there's a goat.
How ungrateful. Like, this
know.
guy saves all the species, and like one goat kills the guy.
There is a message there.
Don't try.
The next thing I want to talk about is these games right up here, what's called not for resale games. And these are super collectible nowadays. Really, the only thing that's different about these is the label. They are, in fact, just regular games, but what they were for was for the in-store demonstration system. I guess it was to stop the store from selling it.
Every cartridge of Sonic I've ever seen says not for resale.
That was a slightly different circumstance. What happened there is that was the pack-in game. Sega didn't want people taking the game out of the package, selling the console, and then selling the game. Highly collectible, a copy of Star Fox with this particular label goes for about $160. The next thing, Frankie, I want to look at is one of the rarest things in my collection. These are the Star Fox Weekend competition cartridges. In 1994, they had a competition to try to get the absolute highest score on a special Star Fox cartridge.
Yeah.
After the competition was done, they either gave away the cartridges or sold them to people. There were not very many of them. It's in the 500 to 600 range. And I have one of the US ones and one of the European ones for Star Fox. There is also a Donkey Kong competition cartridge that for many years I wanted to buy, but even at that time, even in 2008, those cartridges were out of my price range, the $400 to $500 range. I was on the continual watch out for one in the $350 range, which is what I was prepared to pay. I never found one. Nowadays, they're selling for $700, $800. So this is not the same as a normal copy of Star Fox. Frankie, I think we should give this game a try and see what score can we get in the official Star Fox competition.
All right. Is it just the first level?
I'm already dead.
Why you gotta suck so bad? It's impressive graphics for SNES.
It certainly is.
Even if it hasn't aged great. It's like approaching Nintendo 64 graphics.
This is like the blueprint.
The way this works is each competition cycle is 4 minutes. 4 minutes to get as many points as you can. I have 1,755. The absolute record is 144,000.
Which is funny because I never really pay attention to points in games for the most part. I don't think people really do.
I'm not great at Star Fox to begin with.
No, I never really played the SNES one.
The N64 one is just so superior.
Yeah.
As we all know, they canned the release of Star Fox 2 for that very reason.
Yep.
Nintendo 64 one is so sweet. Can't they just do an HD remake of that for the Switch and call it a day?
They can.
Just do that.
Well, I sucked, basically. So besides the cool cartridge itself, which has a unique label, I've also got a Star Fox competition pin. I think when you bought the cartridge, you also got the pin. And you also got this cool little flyer, which gives you information about the competition. And this is the Star Wing competition cartridge, which is just the UK version of that same cartridge.
What else you got, John?
Well, this is a weird one, and I don't even think I've ever plugged this in.
You know what it reminds me of right off the bat? A 32X for Sega.
Yeah.
Sega.
Yeah. I didn't notice till today. It's a double slot. I think it's like a Game Genie. It's called Game Wizard, and it's got a kind of gothic font on it, which makes you think of high fantasy. I'm gonna clean it first.
The options are normal, scan, and action.
Here, the game we're gonna put in the top. How about Tetris Attack? That's a good one. It didn't change anything. Let me turn it off and change it to action. Doesn't seem to have any effect. How about scan?
I mean, it's successfully passing through the game.
Oh,
Hey.
you know how you had Game Genie codes, and if you wanted to really play around, you could modify the Game Genie codes? This lets you find codes with this device. We got a copy of Mario World anywhere around here? Okay, auto code scanner. So we're gonna scan for the number of lives. We'll just do a nice easy one. I suspect once you find your code, then you turn to action to actually turn it on. How many lives do you start with in Super Mario World?
4 or 5.
No, but it has to be the right number because it's gonna scan for it.
What? What a horrible pin.
5, okay. Auto code scanner, number of lives, 5. Show possible codes. There is nothing valid now, please. I think we might need a manual for this. It might be too rare to try to figure out. Just a Game Genie alternative that you probably didn't hear too much about.
And it's largely unusable.
Well, no, it has its own code, and it probably came with a code book.
Game Wizard, I never heard of it. Game Genie, we all heard of it. Remember the game Shark?
Game Shark, yeah, that didn't show up till the PlayStation times, but it was still really cool. Actually connected into the parallel port on the back of the PlayStation 1 on that. So the next item, and the last item we're gonna look at today, is these Nintendo Power cartridges.
I love the magazine so much that I'm like slightly giddy.
It has nothing to do with the magazine. Sold only in Japan. They're a early flash cart, basically, a licensed flash cart. They have 32 megabits or 4 megabytes of flash memory inside. You would buy your cartridge. The cartridges cost $40. They didn't come with any game at all. Then you take it to a kiosk, and for between $10 and $40, you would load a game onto it. And then you could play that game on here as long as you wanted, but if you didn't want that game anymore, you just bring it back, they erase it, and for $10 to $40, you can get a new game. In Japan, cartridges were more expensive than they were in the US. They were usually $100 a cartridge.
Did they have the ability to just rent them from a video store like we did?
That wasn't really as much of a thing as it is here. You could also load more than one game. You could fill up your whole memory with games. The biggest single game that they made was 32 megabytes, except for one, which is Star Ocean. But almost all games would fit on one cartridge.
Hey, this might be a good time for me to ask an important question.
Sure.
You have a lot of Mario Paint cartridges.
I do. They used to sell Mario Paint cartridges for $2. $2, you get a Mario Paint cartridge out the door. The great thing about those Mario Paint cartridges is the circuit board is the biggest circuit board there is. It has the most memory capacity, has a battery backup. So if you had a bad cartridge, you could take the chips out of that bad cartridge and put it in a Mario Paint game, and it would work just fine. I think I used one to fix a cartridge. Most cartridges are actually really reliable. So as a result, I probably have 10 to 15 copies of Mario Paint. We're gonna try out a couple of them. I mean, the games are obviously gonna be in Japanese. When you boot into these cartridges, you end up on this screen. What we're seeing here is the game list, says game list at the top, and then it has a game. Now, I don't know what game this is. Let's try it.
So what you have here is whatever the last kid put on the cartridges?
Yep.
Harvest Moon?
Yeah, this looks like Harvest Moon.
What a delightful find.
Well, now I kind of am morbidly curious about what's
I want to know
these.
what's on every single one.
Yeah,
of these.
well, we should figure it out.
Do we want to take bets on what the game is?
I think the next game is going to be
Usually,
Kirby Superstar.
Street Fighter 2 Turbo.
First of all, it wouldn't be any game with a special chip because these don't have special chips.
What's the game?
We got some very nice fantasy
I
imagery here.
see a wing.
I'm gonna skip this. Zach, what does it say? Is it
It's
Fire
Fire
Emblem?
Emblem. It's a Fire Emblem music.
This is a 1996 Fire Emblem game. The real cartridge is actually very rare. This one doesn't even have the menu, just boots right into this game, which means it's taking up the full pack.
That's cool.
Okay, let's try the next one.
Next.
My guess is it's going to have Super Bass Fishing 3 on this cartridge.
What kid would go to the kiosk and pick up Super Bass?
I don't know.
I can just imagine like a fish enthusiast Japanese boy.
Remember that in Japan especially, this wasn't just a system for kids. So Super Black Bass 3, you know, that's an excellent.
Super Bass game in the Super Bass series.
So let's give this one a try. Konami.
Okay, so what could it be?
Castlevania? I don't know.
Will we never know what game we're playing?
So there's an anime girl.
What month and year do you want to start?
This is going to be like a dating
What's your
sim.
birthday? It's asking all these questions of you. It's clearly one of those
Senpai.
Japanese dating sim. All right, so
That is at least some of what John
a
owns.
set of rarities.
And don't forget, 250,000 views. He's going to open up
I'm
a box.
gonna open up a box.
And burn the contents.
Wait a minute, I didn't say anything about that. You ever go to arcades?
I went sometimes.
The ultimate gaming experience was to play at the arcade. Home consoles were just kind of a facsimile.
That was the way they premiered.
Yeah.
It was the theatrical release, if you will.
For people who absolutely had to have that feel with arcade-style controllers. I think if you were a real arcade rat, I think if you really wanted to spend a lot of time at the arcade, you got very familiar with how these controls worked, and maybe you wanted to have them at home.
I mean, I spent maybe 99% of my video gaming at home, and then I would go to the arcade and I'd be like, I don't need 360 degrees of motion.
Yeah, the D-pad is fine.
We have a selection of controllers that is meant to emulate your arcade experience.
But I didn't know any friends who had things like this.
No, neither did I. I mean, I knew about like the Super Advantage, right? This is Nintendo's first party one. It's made by ASCIIware, and it is a really nice quality controller. It's got turbo functions for all your buttons. Even got the styling of the Super Nintendo to match the purple buttons, which is super cool.
Do you remember what the retail would have been for this when we were kids?
I believe it was $49.95, which is about the price of an inexpensive game at the time.
Right. Certain kids wanted to show off their peripherals.
Yeah.
They wanted to be like, look how prepared to play games I am.
Yeah.
Nintendo would make first-party bags. You can put your Game Boy in here.
Yes.
And all the games.
My friend Gary had a tray in which you put your Super Nintendo in. You lined up all your games on the side. You could wind the controller cords into 2 different areas and then put the controllers in. And it had a plastic cover that went on top.
So video gaming for the business boy.
Yes, for the boy who took a briefcase to school like
you're
myself.
man, he's got his together.
Other than the professional looking ones and the official one, there were a couple ones in between, such as this Fighter Stick SN by ASCIIware, made by the same company as the Super Advantage, similar but not quite as deluxe. The arcade layout is where you have the L and R buttons as 2 separate buttons on the side.
I think trigger buttons have such better design.
Well, when you're on a flat arcade cabinet, you can't really have, the trigger button.
But again, I ask, why is this considered like Class A video gaming?
It is a gimmick.
Yeah, I think that they want you to feel like you're at like a flight deck.
Yeah.
When in actual fact you're playing Mortal freaking Kombat.
With that said, as a child, if I got one of these, I would convince myself I loved it because it's my accessory. But being an adult, I know it's trash.
If my parents bought me an arcade style thing when it would have blown my mind.
Yeah, it would have been awesome.
Yeah.
The gimmick would have worked.
Yep.
This is the Quick Shot. This one's interesting because it takes batteries. It has the 4 buttons in the normal orientation, has your LR here, and then has your start and select up there. And then you have some functions down here for slow motion, which basically just pauses and unpauses the game really fast. And each button has an LED to tell you when you're pressing it, which is probably very cool for the 90s. This must have been exposed to some sun.
So it won't play at all without the batteries? My guess is that the inputs would work, but the LEDs wouldn't light
Well,
up.
we're gonna have to try it. The suction pads are pretty cool. That you'd stick it on your tail and then it wouldn't move around so much, which is really kind of one of the central theories of all of these.
I just don't get it. Like, less portability. More
Harder to use.
Yeah.
And then we have the big boys. These are the Mega Buck ones.
Branded Street Fighter.
Almost Street Fighter. It's like knockoff. S, is it an F? Or is it a not an F? Who can tell?
I remember when we were trying to find like all of the items from the collection.
Yes.
You were like, there's 2 very important items. We've got to find them.
Feel one of these things, Frankie. Hold it in your hand.
Finally crafted, made of wood.
If you're playing a fighter game like Mortal Kombat, I can kind of see the value with the joystick, because to do this move, you need down, diagonal, forward.
If you're in a really intense game of Mortal Kombat, you're going to get real aggressive with the joystick.
Yeah.
Whereas like a controller, you can only get so abusive on.
These would last forever, but in reality, Super Nintendo controllers in general were super durable. All that stuff was really made with kids in mind, and you've seen people get super mad at a Super Nintendo controller. How many times have you ever seen one actually broken? And this is actually my favorite one. First of all, it's a little more portable, very responsive, and I like that the buttons are labeled.
That is nice. I step up to an arcade cabinet and I feel like I don't know what's going on.
Yeah. What is your favorite arcade game?
Probably Simpsons.
Yep.
Yeah.
Simpsons.
Yeah.
Yeah?
And probably TMNT right after that, they're basically the same game.
Yeah. Just different skin, but that's all you need.
Well, Frankie, I think we have to try these out. Turtles in Time? Let's do Turtles in Time. Frankie, you're going to try out the ASCIIware SN Fighter Pro first. Keith, you're going to try out the ASCIIware Super Advantage.
Cowabunga.
I'm Mike.
How did that happen?
It's probably a turbo on or something like that.
Or they all turn to turbo? Okay.
No, I'm Michelangelo. That's what I wanted.
All right, B and cool. Yeah. So Frankie's Leo and Keith is Mikey.
Mikey.
How does it feel, guys? Do you feel like you're really in the arcade?
I actually do. It's responsive, and it doesn't feel weird. Even the 360 controls don't feel weird. I'm only using 2 buttons.
Yeah, this is really a 2-button game.
This was based on the original arcade game, which was then ported to the NES as Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 2.
Yep.
The arcade game is what they called it. I feel like On a regular basis, Keith says, Manhattan, 3 a.m.
Big Apple.
And that's the one, Big Apple.
On a regular basis,
Do you?
I add 3 a.m. to pretty much everything I do.
Big Apple, 3 a.m.
I do it at work, and no one knows what I'm talking about. I just took the pizza. Oops.
Ass.
I know.
So who gets the pizza has always been a real big problem in these games.
Yeah.
I know. And then sometimes no one gets the pizza and it disappears.
It's just dumb.
And it's just
that's
all the
just
worst.
incompetence on both your parts. Yeah, so like diagonal down matters. You do kind of a slow attack if you don't also press a direction.
Yeah.
When you do
I see.
jump kicks.
The Super Advantage is pretty simple to use. I don't really like the buttons. I would prefer to use a regular controller, but I'm kind of digging the joystick.
Do you want to trade for real quick?
Yeah,
Just
sure,
to see
let's
what
do
the-
that.
Do they feel pretty much the same?
I'm getting used to it.
I like the other one more right now. There's more weight to this, so
Yeah.
it's not moving
Doesn't
around
move
as
around.
much.
Yeah, and you really do kind of need a good grip
Yeah.
on the table.
I think I prefer the other one. In this particular case, the jump and the attack are diagonal from one
Yeah.
another, B and Y, whereas these were lateral.
Yeah, that is true.
Yeah, this one's laid out like the arcade style. That one's laid out like a Super Nintendo controller.
Yeah, and I don't think that's the way to go necessarily. You attack April. Like
You want?
April's the final boss. Let's try a different game, different controllers. I'd like to try Power Rangers. Shall we do
do it.
that? So first of all, as far as like graphics for Power Rangers games go,
Yep.
this is pretty sweet so far.
Yeah.
This is pretty good. You have the quick shot, which it turns out
I got the
does
quick-
work without the batteries.
Right.
Including lighting up, which is pretty fancy.
There were other functions on it like memory bank, slow motion. Keith's theory is that maybe there's like a save function and
Yeah,
that
you can
requires
program
battery.
in buttons.
Fighting mode?
Yeah, because we're just gonna fight each other.
Yeah.
I don't understand what all these 360 degrees of buttons is.
Well, you've got the L and R. That's the two gray ones.
I'm gonna be Goldar.
And I'm going to be this giant lipstick.
Now I will destroy the lipstick monster, and when I destroy Rita, the Power Rangers will have no. So I have to tell you, this does feel more appropriate than a regular console controller.
Yeah.
You know how like you double tap to run?
Yep.
That feels more natural for sure. Okay, look at button masher over there.
I'll say.
Can you defeat a button masher?
Well, wait, should I just do that?
I feel like I'm hacking at work.
You totally won.
Scale.
Do you find that this is much easier to match than a normal controller?
This is, because look at, I can use the palm of my hand. I'm using some sort of like random number generator fuzzy logic algorithm or something like that, and I'm pretty much unstoppable.
Oh, Goldar's dead! Frankie employed the most basic possible strategy.
The power in the palm of my hand, but not really, because it's this huge.
Do you want to trade real quick?
Yes. Let me go with Lord Zed.
Who I think is one of the cooler designed villains.
He's a good villain.
He's got a brain exposed. and
Lord
stuff.
Zed.
And I'll be the White Tiger.
White Ranger, Tiger, Power.
Zordon's gonna like watch us. Rangers.
What am I doing?
Okay, ready?
Frankie's employing the Keith strategy. A time-honored strategy.
And David Fitzgerald as Zordon.
David Fitzgerald.
Or whatever the hell the guy's name is. What are we doing? I don't appreciate that you keep winning. Look, I literally, I used all
Use
buttons.
the
like
palm
it's a-
of your hand.
Oh, really?
Oh, just go, 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 go.
Look at this.
God.
You make the noise with your mouth too.
Go, 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 go. Ooh, I'm so mad. I'm gonna beat Zed and make out with Kimberly. I'm gonna die here.
Make a time zone brawl.
Yeah.
What do you think was the better of these? This is my preference.
Yeah,
is
this
the
is
better
definitely
one.
better.
I'm enjoying this arcade setup for playing the games incorrectly.
Okay, Ultimate, Mortal Kombat 3.
What was is that like a different Mortal Kombat than regular Mortal
Yeah,
Kombat?
it like reintroduced characters they stripped from the first one. Oh, you're supposed to jam the buttons.
Oh yeah. Did we get any codes?
Spend the first few minutes to see if we can get one attack off the ground. Oh, okay, so that's run. He says toasty, but it always sounded to me like Humpty, Humpty.
They certainly are rattly, these controllers.
I've been trying to do that move the whole time.
I got it. It's backpack low kick.
Oh, nice. Net.
Nothing but. The guy told me I'm superb.
This game made me think when I was a child that like uppercutting was a thing. It's like what you can do in a fight.
Uppercut him, dude. Don't take
If he did that to me,
I would just pull him back with my scorpion rope and I'd uppercut him.
I don't know. Does it feel like you're at the Dream Machine?
My experience with arcades was I never really went to them. I'd be walking around in like the mall and like
You see others playing video games?
my vision would lock in position, you know, where the Dream Machine was. And I kind of just stare at it while I walk by.
Oh!
But I never really was interested in the arcades.
But birthday parties, you go to the arcade.
Yeah, yeah.
And the mom of whoever's birthday it was would buy tokens for everybody.
Yes.
But then it was super awkward to ask her to buy you more
Buy you
tokens.
more, yeah.
One quick round of Tetris. B-type or A-type? What's our game here?
A?
9?
Uh-oh.
9?
Let's do it.
Give me your instant feedback thoughts on the controllers.
My instant feedback is that I have to play it slower because I feel like the control stick is less precise.
For a minute there, I was looking at the left side and saying, oh, Keith's doing pretty good.
No.
But no, and then I looked at the right side and saw.
Okay, I think that it's a fun way to play.
This one is still my personal favorite one. This one was your favorite. I think this one is kind of one of the best of both worlds because you get the arcade layout and you get a little bit of weight, but it's not as bulky and ridiculous as these
Right,
ones.
feels a little bit normal.
For you, we have a small but interesting part of my collection to look at, test equipment. Super Nintendo test equipment was something that players at home never saw.
You know what this reminds me of? Training videos for Nintendo employees.
Yeah, like maybe at a retail store, but you have to watch the training video.
For Nintendo.
For Nintendo.
If you're selling Nintendo.
You need to be trained.
And the kids couldn't have done anything. I mean, they're good kids.
Sometimes they'll put soft drink or something on there.
It was fine. I would just...
And so would these have been used at retail stores?
Yes, you would have had a very basic setup where you really just would have had a Super Nintendo and maybe one of these cartridges. If someone bought in a Super Nintendo that they didn't know if it was working or not, they could set it up on a monitor they had there, test it out, and see if it was working with one of these test cartridges. If you were a bigger video game store, you might have one of these. And this actually connected to an NES test system. You'd stick them together, and then you had a combination NES and Super Nintendo test station, and then you get to the big guys. And there were a few places nationally that could service Super Nintendos on an electronic level. Service manuals that Nintendo would issue, and these are very rare. They have directions on how to fix the Super Nintendo on a technical level. I've actually got 3 test cartridges in my collection. Nintendo issued many test cartridges. There's at least 3 more besides this. I was pretty obsessed with getting the test cartridges because they're rare, they're unusual. This was actually one of the very last things I bought as part of my collection. Let's start off with the oldest test cartridge I have. Got our controller test, can select that one. It instructs you buttons to press, including the diagonals.
I feel like you could actually give this cartridge to a very young child and they might just have fun pressing the buttons.
I think you're right, actually. If this was the only Super Nintendo game I had, I'd make some kind of hay out of it. I think John just likes that obnoxious sound.
I kind of like it too.
So that's one of the tests. You want to try?
I want to try it.
Let me get next level.
I'll wait till Keith's
Keith's
done.
really good at this game.
Nice.
These cartridges are clearly a show for parents and people who are coming in. Because there's no way if you were in the back office you'd need the Super Nintendo logo on top of everything.
Right.
This one's one of my favorites, the Super Nintendo sound module test.
Wait 12 sec.
Yes.
Gins.
It's actually doing both speakers.
Actually, that's the last thing you hear before you enter a different dimension.
Just probably is the sound.
People say this is the last thing they hear before they die. They smell bacon and they hear this.
I've heard this
That'd be a cool
in
way
a
to
game.
die. It's like a gun blast.
Yeah.
This is Zelda 2.
I think so.
For some reason on the SNES.
Dun, dun, dun.
It might have just been whatever piece of music they had around.
Yeah, this is definitely Zelda 2. So maybe Zelda 2 was like, oh, this is kind of a complex song for the first Nintendo system.
We have a Super Scope test here, which I have never gone into this menu. It has you fire at the bullseye.
You can try the SNES rifle.
You got your mouse test here, electronics test, button test, cursor movement test. All right, let's do the cursor test. Oh, I did the wrong button and it failed. Okay, so I have to press this button 6 times. Good job. Look for smooth mouse movement.
Oh, look at that. The mouse is on a layer higher than the text.
It is.
This one charismatic game.
And then we get the burn-in test. This is designed to test if your Super Nintendo is actually reliable over a long period of time. And it says actually in this manual, once you're done repairing any Super Nintendo, you put this on and you just leave it for 8 hours.
Anthony! Stop testing Super Nintendos! He lets it run all day. This is so weird. Have you ever seen this before?
I have not watched this version.
Maybe they would be playing this on the TV in the retail.
Why is it like kind of 70s psychedelic?
It's testing like all various features. Look at that SMB3 graphic.
Oh, it makes me happy. SMB3.
Testing the Mosaic processor, super high res mode.
High res.
Yeah, it's like 512 by 512.
Yeah, and then of course that Repairman Mario, which you saw on the back of every manual. This all reminds me more of like PC games.
Yeah,
it does.
Under what circumstances would it not be able to play through that whole thing?
If something goes wrong in one of the processors and then it ends up locking up, you would know.
So the idea is that it just runs through most of the things a Super Nintendo could do.
Can do.
What does it mean by burn-in test?
It's an older term that doesn't really apply to Super Nintendo, but it's kind of carried over from when components had to heat up, really get the full temperature.
Okay.
And they were kind of burning. So you'd have to make sure that even when they heated up, they were reliable.
So stress testing the hardware.
Yeah, so now I'm gonna plug in one of the other two test cartridges I have, and these are both from later on in the Super Nintendo's life. These are both labeled NTF 2.5 test cartridge. The character test looks a lot like the one that we saw from the burn-in, but some things are different. Notice these are Super Mario World sprites. Some of these Super Mario World sprites are not the final version from the actual Super Nintendo game. They are beta sprites. Like these are beta assets from Super Mario World that don't exist in the final game.
I don't like that.
Right channel. Right.
It kind of plays a bizarre version of the SMB1 theme. Here, this one, listen to this one.
This is your left channel. Left.
The voice.
Left. This is your left channel. Left.
And I've never done the color test. I don't know what that is.
I bet I can guess.
I have a general sense.
So it just looks like it displays various patterns. This is more for your TV.
This is just to like pad out the menu, maybe.
Yeah.
The poor kid, that's all they got for Christmas.
These cartridges were very expensive. They were like in the $300 range originally.
For the privilege of testing a Super Nintendo.
We'll just plug in the last one just to see if there's any differences. And it is the same thing except that we have an accessories test, which is just those other two tests from the other cartridge in a different form. These are all kind of the same stuff, but they're all pretty different in their UI, which is kind of odd.
Imagine buying them all and being $900 deep into the whole thing. How much did you have to spend on all this?
They were pretty rare even then, and I think I paid in the $100 to $200 range per cartridge.
Wow, really? But what the heck is this?
This is a Super Nintendo that's just been bolted onto here, and it has a bunch of connections in the front. And you would take the video from the NES unit and actually run it into this, and then you could test the Super Nintendo or Nintendo. You test your controls, you could test your power adapter, you could test your RF switch and your multi-out connector. I don't think it's particularly useful, to be honest. At the time that I bought this, which is when I bought the rest of my collection, no one really had any idea that it's really just a Super Nintendo with a couple cables coming out the back. And a little tiny bit of electronics inside. I think I spent $200 on it.
Do you think that retro video game stores today, do you think they use the testers?
I doubt it. I highly doubt it.
People show up with broken Super Nintendos and they try to help them.
At this point, I think the number of problems in Super Nintendos are pretty known.
They just swap stuff.
Yeah, they just swap stuff. Or clean it. Nobody has the cleaning cartridges anymore. Now you can just take it somewhere, clean it, you pay them $10 and it's done. But a lot of the circuitry repair problems, nobody really is fixing those anymore, except now Super Nintendos are starting to become a little more rare, so people are kind of interested in that stuff again. Which takes us to the third item. This manual is one of my most favorite pieces in my collection because it's got so much information on the Super Nintendo. Some people have made very good third-party schematics of the Super Nintendo, but I've never actually even seen the scans of these images from this manual online. So the way that these manuals worked is they were living documents. Nintendo would mail out to everybody who bought a set of these new updated information, and they would have this list of destroy pages and insert pages. So it would say, take out pages 738 through 740, throw them away, put in these new pages.
A Google Doc would really have been handy at that time.
Yes. Controller, Super Scope mouse, game packs, Super Game Boy, test fixtures, ICs, burn-in, and service bulletins, and then an appendix. This is the system overview. The kind of information that, certainly at this time, in 1992, when this manual first came out, you never would have gotten this information unless you were a developer or someone who was servicing it. Here, for example, is a block diagram of the system of the Super Nintendo, where the sound section is, the different controllers, and also a very nice parts diagram of the system, so that if you had a broken part, you could order the replacement part that you needed. And then these things, which are super cool, which are the schematics of the system. How to take it apart, Very important information. There were 2 different types of security screws. One for the console itself and a different type of security screw on the cartridge front so that people at home couldn't open up to service themselves. At the time, they were unique to Nintendo. So I paid about $300 for this. Right now on eBay, there's a set of all the books. There's 6 of them total, which includes the one for NES, the one for Game Boy, and that complete set, they're asking $7,000. But I think I could get $1,000 for this book. Some information on the Super Scope, how it works, a section on the Super Nintendo mouse. This is one of the most interesting sections, I think. This is about game packs. There's schematics for each of the different games. So here's, for example, is the schematic for Battle Clash. Here's the parts for F-Zero, Illusion of Gaia, and it just goes on and on. Here's the Mario paint. Just basically anything that you need to know in order to fix the physical hardware, the electronics of a system contained within this book. A whole chapter dedicated to the Super Game Boy, including its schematics and part list. Interesting thing about the Super Game Boy, it actually contains a complete Game Boy in it as well, just without the display, because the Super Nintendo was not powerful enough to emulate it. A section on how to do the burn-in test, including some of the stuff that we saw earlier about how it should look in color, no less. Actually, those are Doctor Service Marios. This lady that we didn't get to see any of, because she wasn't even in our cartridge.
What the hell would she be doing in there?
Instead, they used the Mario 3 graphic, and apparently in later versions, they use this woman.
And she bounces around the screen.
I mean, we don't never hear about any big faults in the Super Nintendo, right? But there were actually a number of problems, and this little booklet of problems are all the warranty repair recalls that Nintendo had associated with their parts. A problem with the cable manufacturing that would make the strain relief break on the Super Nintendo controllers. A problem with NCAA basketball, which made it incompatible with some Super Nintendo consoles. A problem with the test cartridge itself that generated a failure that was not actually valid. So, just a ton of Super Nintendo information in there.
You know, it's for a certain kind of person.
Yeah. Frankie, we're back with another round of rare items in my collection.
Is there an order we should do this in?
Definitely. We're going to be looking at the Super Nintendo modem, which used to allow you to play with your friends over the telephone lines. We're going to take a look at where you could play Super Nintendo games in the arcade. I've got a few prototype games that we're going to take a look at, and then I've got a Super Game Boy 2 from Japan. And finally, one of the most cool pieces in my collection, development boxes that I used to develop Super Nintendo games on. 2 of the most rare things in my collection. Certainly 2 of the most valuable.
I think having like a development kit is really neat. Like, make your own Super Nintendo game. You know, I make games from here, there. There's Box Mac, Secret of the Seven Shells, released a couple of years ago. I took it off Steam because nobody wanted to play.
It's really all your faults.
Yeah.
So why don't we start off with the Super Game Boy 2? It looks a lot like the regular Super Game Boy, except it's this cool blue translucent plastic. The Super Game Boy was very popular, but they couldn't play with their friends. The Game Boy, if you remember, has a port on it which lets you hook up with the link cable to play with somebody else. I never did that as a kid. Never once. However, in Japan, it was huge.
I didn't really see it take off that much until there were Game Boy Colors and Pokemon.
Is the idea that you would have to have a friend come over with their own Super Nintendo and their own Super Game Boy 2?
Or their own
Game Boy.
Yeah.
Okay.
The only reason this exists is because they wanted to add the link port. Okay. So that you could do just that.
Player 1 is up on the TV screen, and then Player 2 has a Game Boy?
Player 2 has a Game Boy.
The cooler thing would have been to somehow convert certain games into 2-player games.
That would have been pretty cool, but that was beyond the scope of this device, which literally just has a Game Boy inside.
Literally, that's what makes it a 2, Game Boy 2.
The 2 is just because of the port, and they have to obviously change the board to add the port, but that's really pretty much it. I just like the blue translucent plastic, and it is kind of uncommon.
The Game Boy has a really good library of games.
It does.
There are solid games to play on that system. It's not just a watered down NES.
Yeah.
For the longest time, Game Boy was my favorite. I had so many games for it. I remember doing chores at my grandparents' house and getting paid like $10 in every couple of weeks, along with allowance. I could buy myself a new Game Boy.
See, I never had like allowance as a kid, so I only ever had 4 Game Boy games.
But Keith makes a good point, which is that like the games were cheaper.
And if you had a Super Nintendo with a Super Game Boy, you can now play that on the TV.
Yeah.
Play it, pretend it's like a real game.
Yeah, you've essentially bought yourself a new Super Nintendo game.
Yeah.
Or you could pretend you did. You know when I played the Game Boy the most was when my mom had to go to the hair salon to get her hair cut.
And you'd have nothing to do but wait.
And there was so much waiting.
Yep.
Like especially on car trips. My dad was frustrated I wasn't looking out the window at all the cool shit. He's like, look at these mountains. And I'm like, no, look at these mountains.
Look at this. Mario.
Look at Mario Land 2, 6 golden coins.
Unlike in the US, Super Nintendo items are not particularly valuable in Japan. So there's new ones of these floating around in Japan at junk shops, Japanese junk shops. And you can still get these for about the same price I paid for this, which is about $40, $40, $50. You can get one new. What I've got here is a JAMA arcade board for a Super Nintendo. This is a full Super Nintendo, but it's compatible with arcade machines where you just plug in this board and this is now a Super Nintendo coin-op. The games came on not with regular cartridges, but rather with these big, long connectors. They released about 14 games. I have 3, F-Zero, Super Tennis, and Super Mario World, which are the 3 launch titles. This board came out at the same time as the Super Nintendo, and it was really meant to promote the Super Nintendo to get you to buy one.
Super Mario World, am I gonna have to play it with a joystick and arcade buttons?
They came with controllers on flex bends.
Okay, okay. Like what you would see at like a store when they're demoing a game.
It's that same thing. And it also came with a bunch of graphics to make the cabinet look cool. So these just basically plugged in right here. Not entirely useful, but an interesting piece of Super Nintendo history.
Yeah, it's interesting.
Next, I want to take a look at an area that I don't have a lot of in my collection, which is prototypes. Even at the time I was building my collection, there was insane hype around prototype games. The reality of the situation is that almost all prototype Super Nintendo games are the exact same version as the one that was released to the public. These games that people call prototypes were actually review copies sent to journalists.
Kind of a misnomer.
There are definitely prototypes out there of games, but those are tremendously rare. This is TKO Super Championship Boxing. This looks pretty prototypey. It's got this Nintendo label on it that's clearly not production. And if you open it up, it actually has a board in it that looks like this that has socketed chips on it. After the games were done developing, they would just program up some chips, send them out to game reviewers. The game reviewers were all supposed to return those cartridges. Sometimes they didn't. And that's how we got all those prototypes around, but they're not really prototypes, they're just demo cartridges. I have 2 American ones, which are these 2, and then 1 from Europe. And a few have had different copies of games, like different versions, and fewer still have had unreleased games on them. But those are outrageously rare. They were rare even at the time of this. This is a pinball review copy, and I have no idea what this one actually is. This is another kind of quick one. This is the X-Band Super Nintendo modem. Came in this totally cool purple case.
I like it.
It is neat. Oh, is that lock-on technology?
It is.
More pastors.
We have this great idea for a new game called Sonic and Knuckles. Plus it has new technology. Lock-on technology. It's revolutionary.
You would plug this into your Super Nintendo, plug in a game, a supported game. Not all games were supported. Notably, Mortal Kombat 3 was supported by this. You connect up your phone line right over here. I think it has a UI. I think it has an interface. It does have like a cool 90s guy there.
There's a lot of like good ideas with these weird accessories, but the technology just wasn't widespread enough.
A little switch that we don't know what it does.
I think it's pulse versus tone dialing.
If you would like to connect the X-Band network, make sure the switch is down. If you'd like to play a game without using the X-Band network, move the switch up.
Up. There we go. I have never ever plugged this in before, and I've also never even watched this intro. It's got a game in it. That's a WWF game. All right, new player. So you have to create an ID, and you can log into their system.
Ahead of its time.
Yeah.
Probably why it was
Totally
not adopted.
I mean, by 98, Keith and I were playing PC games online together.
But in 94, you probably weren't. This interface is super 90s, isn't it?
I like the green border.
Don't have to use your real name. Make up something like Thrasher or Electric Ninja.
Or Slayer.
Ooh, I could choose a character. That guy's scary. There's quite a few of them. There's downright a lot of them.
There's a trash head.
There's a huge number of them.
You can also create a taunt.
They had a mailbox so you could send people messages.
And this was available in the United States.
Yeah.
I can't send people messages on the Nintendo Switch, but I can on the X-Band.
Seems to be a problem with the phone line. Make sure it's connected. This is very slick. I'm surprised at how slick it is.
X-Band probably thought that they were going to be the ones.
What a revolutionary idea.
Yeah.
You could play like over the internet with friends. I mean, the latency must have been awful. The input is what had to go back and forth. So to try to keep your copy of the game synchronized with their copy of the game, that's insane.
Yeah.
How could it possibly work?
I mean, they didn't do a very good job with like Wii.
Never mind X-Band, but
Yeah.
it is a pretty slick looking product. And I'm pleased that it works. This is another one of the rarest pieces in my collection. I have 3 of these boxes, this exact box. These are development units that people would buy from Nintendo for rather obscene amounts of money to be able to develop games. A lot of people made third-party console development kits that were a lot cheaper than this. This was the premium one.
Is this what a major software developer would have used?
Yes. In fact, this one is from Squaresoft. It's still got the Squaresoft property tag on it.
So do you think maybe Final Fantasy IV was developed with that very unit?
I know for a fact the game Secret of Evermore was developed.
Really?
Yes.
On this particular unit?
These 2, the 2 that I have.
I wish I liked that game.
It is kind of cool.
It is cool.
It was the only game developed in the US by Squaresoft. Actually, I spoke to one of the Squaresoft developers and he confirmed that this was one of those units. It's also possible that these might have been used for the translation work of some of the other Square titles.
Like Chrono Trigger?
It's possible. I don't have confirmation of that, but you certainly could have done that work on these machines. These come up for sale once in a while. There's one on eBay right now for about $4,000. These I think I paid $500 or $600 a piece for back then. There was one more that I wanted to buy that I should have bought that went into the 700s, and 600 was kind of my limit. That one had the software. That's the big problem. I do not have the software to drive these boxes.
So this is maybe $500 or so?
Yeah.
What did Squaresoft pay Nintendo for it?
$11,000.
Okay.
There were also licensing costs.
Of course. So we've got two normal Super Nintendo controller ports with a custom plastic. This particular one is number 134. There were at least 280 made. Standard IEC power port, on-off switch, analog RGB port. You've got a MIDI port and also a sound input port, which allowed you to record sound samples for your music. You've got two SCSI ports, SCSI in, SCSI out. You'd hook this back up to your PC computer, and a standard Super Nintendo multi-out port.
Is it a fully contained Super Nintendo?
It is, but you notice it does not have a cartridge slot. This is structured in a layered board system. This has the circuit that actually allows you to load stuff into the cartridge board, socketed with tons of RAM chips, static RAM chips. You download your game data in, and then you could start executing it. This one also happens to have a DSP-1 board, the chip used in Mario Kart for the additional math. It has a board which adds that functionality in so you can test that. And it also has two more boards which are designed to support the creation of music and sound.
So the musician would develop on this too?
Yep. If you wanted those speech samples, you would record it into this machine, it would digitize it, you could add it into your game.
Cool.
This has a dedicated CPU on it itself. It's an NEC V20. Its function was to just control this system for running games. It's an in-circuit emulator, so it can pause the CPU at any frame to take a look at what the registers are.
Well, how do you load it? There's no hardware component?
If I had the software, I'd build a PC that could drive this, which would be a 1992 era, probably 386 PC. That ran DOS 3.3. If I need to buy a SCSI card for that, I would do it. It would cost me a couple $100. I'd do it in a minute to try it out. I never noticed this before until just today. There is a expansion connector port. You want to make external peripherals? This is how you do it by this bus.
Okay.
And no one ever did except for that one satellite-based interface. So this has everything that a real Super Nintendo has. I had never noticed that port before. This is another device along that same line. This is called an SF Box 2. This is a Japanese development box made by the Ricoh company, who actually made the Super Nintendo processor. You got a break button where you can stop execution if you want to right away. You've got some standard Nintendo chips here, and you've got a cartridge slot here. You can actually just plug in a game, and then if you want to break at a certain point, you can.
What does break mean?
If you're executing a program, right, and you want to halt the program and see what is happening this second, publishers would really try to please Nintendo as much as they possibly could, because otherwise all that development effort that they put into the game is basically wasted.
But I bet you Genesis would take them if they really...
But your game is now developed for a different platform. It's not like you can just instantly change from Genesis to Super Nintendo.
Is that right? I thought they were all like just programmed in C.
They are, but the way you interact with the hardware is totally different between the two. The Genesis, for example, is much more powerful. It's much faster than a Super Nintendo.
Maybe we'll make a game.
Maybe?
Maybe about BoxMac.
Or maybe not.
Yeah, so we were going to shoot a JuntSNES today, and it was going to be about games. And one of the games that we're missing that we wanted to talk about was Earthbound, which is a sought-after cartridge that Jon does in fact own. We can't find it. Now we're here, back at his house, looking for the damn game. He really has no idea where it is. Keith recently got a vasectomy, and we're making him do hard labor right now, so his still hurt.
Okay, that's the box for the Super NT.
Oh, here's the Super NT. That's interesting. These are not Earthbound.
So we've exhausted this location.
Well, we gotta put it back. We can't just trash my house.
The reason we're in this situation is because you trashed your house.
No, I don't give a for the cartridges, to be honest.
No?
No.
I buy valuables and I don't care where they go?
I don't care about it enough to, like, have an asset tracked.
Sorry for making a mess.
Sorry about my vasectomy.
Pull out that audio case. Here, let me get you a flashlight.
See, a tripod. Looks like a decent tripod.
Yeah, it's available if you ever need it.
Good to know. Wouldn't want to asset track, mother.
Look, it's one stupid cartridge.
And one stupid tripod and one stupid everything.
What cartridge that I paid $52 for in 2006? Nothing, huh?
Making Darth Vader noises here.
It's not back there.
There's like miscellaneous iPads and...
Wouldn't want to asset track those either. He's so full of shit.
I don't care where Earthbound is.
I don't give a shit.
I don't care where anything is.
I don't give a shit.
All right, I didn't realize you were like a Zen Buddhist, non-materialistic type with all the shit
in this house. Not here.
John's gonna live in a tiny house.
Oh my god, I don't want you to
Just some plumbing. I have to justify why a $50 thing I purchased many years ago is not important for me to know the exact location of.
Yeah,
Even
you
if
do.
it's worth $700 today.
It's related to a collection that you actually value. It's you're
I value it as a collection, not as like a series of individual
Yeah,
pieces.
the most valuable parts of that collection. Those.
I don't really care about the cash value of it.
Okay, let's go. Let's keep moving.
I don't like conflict.
Well, you came to the wrong friend. These are empty. These are just cardboard. It's a big box of games.
All right. Cast open your shades.
There's lots of stuff here, but I don't know how deep to go.
Cables. Composite cables.
Oh, I found one, but it's not Earthbound. So there's 3 cartridges total we're looking for, and this is one of them.
Which one is that?
This is P-Cross.
Okay.
What
the heck is this?
That's a different kind of emulator unit where you store games on a floppy drive.
Oh, cool.
Underneath the TV, there's that wooden hutch that is on the far side, the side that's furthest away from you. There's little doors down the bottom.
So under the TV. EJ be nimble, EJ be quick.
I see something.
Holy We have Earthbound Johnny.
Woo! Yes! Yes! I am not going to get yelled at.
Who would yell at you?
Nobody. Just everybody will be yelling at me in my mind. Frankie will be on me, like, just like high school. It never happened.
There's some good stuff.
Give me.
So the reason Keith is so happy is because Keith's the one that encouraged us to come back here and try to look for it.
This is like the case of some of my most favorite games. They were in that oak cabinet, weren't they?
Yeah.
And there's another copy of P-Cross, yeah. And Lufia 2. Mario All-Stars plus Super Mario World.
You're really happy.
In here.
Chrono Trigger, my copy of Chrono Trigger.
I have a copy too, so I'm not as impressed.
Congratulations, you guys did a great job.
And mostly EJ, because he was the one who like went into the trenches.
I modeled some really good leadership by screaming at John.
What is that?
I have a question for you now.
Yeah.
Do you still don't give a shit where your Earthbound is?
I knew it was.
Or did you just not want to walk over here?
No, I wasn't giving up. Frankie was just giving me a lot of for not knowing exactly where one
was rationalizing.
the 1,300 cartridges is.
Yeah, but these are the most important games in the whole collection.
What I've learned with Frankie is like he will give you shit. It still may not be warranted, but that said, if you're gonna try to throw it back at him, you have to be rational in your comeback.
You're right.
You can't just be like, nope, I don't give a crap about my $600 Earthbound.
And then
you think that he's not gonna be like,
then
what?
he's just gonna double down on it.
Exactly. But you just gave him more ammo.
Oh well, don't you care about your collection?
You'd have to come up with a really rational reason why you didn't give a about your favorite games.
And I did. I had one. The best. You just didn't accept it.
I'm just making this show about Super Nintendo. You know, Earthbound. That. Sorry.
It's okay. No, you're right.
Let's go make the show.
Frankie, we're coming to the end of the most interesting pieces of my collection, but there is a critical aspect that we have not yet explored, which is what are my favorite games?
The games are important when it comes to video games.
Absolutely. What I've done is I've collected 6 of my most favorite games, and I want to take a look at them with you today. We got a nice analog TV setup, got a nice fun environment.
How do you feel about playing games like these on HD? Do you think this is superior?
I don't know if it's superior, but I certainly love it just as much.
It's designed for it.
Yeah, I think if I had enough room, I would definitely have a big, huge tube TV setup, because I think that's the way these games are meant to be played. So, let me talk about one of my first favorite games, Tetris and Dr. Mario Combo Pack. It was the first exposure I ever had to 2-player Tetris. The NES version, of course, did not have 2-player. There was a 2-player version by Tengen, but it was pulled from the shelves due to copyright violations, so not many people ever saw it.
Did Tetris for the Game Boy come out before this one? Because I remember playing Game Boy Tetris Link Cable.
You're probably right. Well, it was certainly, as I said, my first exposure to it.
Well, it's an important aspect of Tetris.
Yeah.
Not only are you playing to get the most number of pieces, you're sending pieces at the other person.
Yes.
And that now with Tetris 99, it's like an essential aspect of Tetris.
Absolutely. I kind of upplayed the Tetris, but there's also Dr. Mario in here.
Are you a Dr. Mario guy?
My girlfriend is, and she'll be very disappointed in me at my performance.
I used to play this quite a bit with Lisa.
He was her Sherpa.
We're gonna play a quick mixed match, Keith, okay? A mixed match is 1 game of Dr. Mario and a game of Tetris.
Lisa went to med school with John to get good at Dr. Mario.
Med school.
Crap, this is B-type, I gotta go faster.
Who's the idiot?
Me!
You're more of an idiot than me?
Frankie is like insulting my playing here. It's definitely helping. Oh no, we cleared it!
What does that mean?
So you move on to Dr. Mario.
Oh, this is neat.
It actually can run both game cores at the same time.
That's kind of cool.
Yeah.
I take things like that for granted these days.
Yes, I mean, but at the time, this whole idea was pretty awesome.
Somebody on the left there is pretty decent at Dr. Mario. And I think it's John.
Trying.
Again, he is a licensed professional.
And now it goes to A-Type.
Ooh, that's my game.
I messed it all up.
Keith's way behind. Keith is, look, I'm not doing good in Tetris.
What is your major malfunction?
I'm having controller issues, to be honest.
Do you guys remember when you were kids, the controller excuse?
Yes, the bad controller. Like, oh, this controller's the bad one, even though it's the same exact controller, even though it's still a first-party controller.
But every once in a while, they'd be telling the truth.
Yeah.
And what do you do then? How do you get to the bottom of such a thing? That's why you need a justice system. Dong, dong,
Time up.
You won.
Up, and here's the results. I won!
That much was obvious.
See?
Indeed.
A fun little game. That's kind of a fun thing.
Yeah, I thought it was fun.
But wait, why is it one of your favorite games?
Yeah, I was confused by that because it's
I mean, Link to the Past is not here.
it's weird.
But Tetris
So you're
is.
saying you like this more than Link to the Past, which is okay. It's an opinion.
You didn't think of it in those terms.
I didn't.
You like this more than Chrono Trigger.
I do, actually. Chrono Trigger I'm not a huge fan of. I didn't own Chrono Trigger until I made the collection, and I had not played it until then.
That's valid. There are games out there that are really good that they're not part of my nostalgic experience, and so they never made it into my rotation.
Yeah, I had this game, so I was really excited
Sure.
to play this.
But you shouldn't say I don't like Chrono Trigger.
No, it's okay. It's fine. I like it as much as I like Secret of Mana. I think they're both good games. I like this because it's two-player and it's fun.
And there's something to be said for casual gaming. It's the thing that causes you to fire up the SNES. Yeah. A long RPG can be a little dissuading.
30 minutes before you have to go somewhere, I'm not gonna boot up an RPG.
We talk about one classic trope from our childhoods.
Sure.
Leaving the power on the console on all
Absolutely.
day. Because there were no save states.
Yep, that's right.
I was not allowed to do that.
Of course not. Of course you weren't allowed to.
This is a Nintendo, original Nintendo. It had a square light. I cut out a piece of electrical tape to that exact size and put it over so it looks black.
Wow. And if they ever found it, ripped it off, on the other side it said, F you, mom and dad.
The reasons were such bullshit too, like, oh, it wastes power. It used so little power.
Standby mode on the PS4 probably uses
Some
more
people are
power
just
than this.
weird about power.
Yeah.
You know the people who are real like, please leave the room so we can turn this light off?
Next game, Super Mario All-Stars plus Super Mario.
Oh.
This is like the most fun platforming I think you can get in a single package. Near the end of the Super Nintendo's life, this was a pack-in game.
Right.
So you buy a Super Nintendo, you get this, which is so much entertainment right out of the box.
You might not even need to buy a game.
Near the end, it was like $40 for a Super Nintendo with this game. You know?
$40 with that?
It's not like SMB 1, 2, and 3 are like throwaway casual games.
No, I love the Nintendo originals, but I think the implementation of these is very good, right?
Can I say something slightly controversial?
Yeah.
I did a playthrough of SMB 1 on my Switch recently.
Yep.
Look, the physics are great. It's a pioneer. It's a respected game. The graphic design is nice for what it is. It's iconic, in fact.
Yeah.
It's not a very good game.
I agree with you.
It's repetitive.
Except I also don't think the physics are that great.
Yeah?
At the time, of course, it was a great game. I loved it.
So I think for that reason, you got to give SMB3 huge props for taking that and developing it into SMB3.
I think 3 is objectively the best one.
John prefers Worlds.
I prefer Worlds.
And I can see that. I can't argue why I like 3 better.
I think 3 has a little more diversity, level to level.
It certainly had new ideas, the most new ideas in it. Well, let's power it up here.
Do you guys remember the Mario All-Stars commercial? The one that was like, it's 5 times the Mario. Mario this, Mario that.
But this is juiced up 16-bit only on the Super Nintendo Entertainment System Mario. So it's bigger Mario, better Mario, in-your-face Mario. It's Raccoon Mario, Mario throwing fireballs, Mario hurling turnips, Mario negotiating an arms deal. Okay, maybe not.
Super Mario All-Stars plus Super Mario World special logo there.
You know what's also interesting is nobody ever found it controversial to update the graphics for those old games, even though they were classics.
Yeah. This was the very first, I think, re-release of a game on a superior system.
The idea of like updated graphics.
Yeah, and that was a really exciting idea to me, especially considering you're getting 3 NES games in one.
The thing that excited me most was you're going to take SMB3, which is already so great looking, and you're going to give it that 16-bit push to basically make it just equal with Super Mario World.
Yeah. I suppose the first HD remaster.
It is. I don't think All-Stars or the All-Stars versions of the first 3 games ever have appeared on any virtual console.
Lost Levels, Super Mario 1, 2, 3, and there's Mario World right there. So you just pick your game. I'm going to go into Super Mario 3 here.
Everyone must know by now, but in case they don't, Mario Lost Levels is actually Japan's Mario 2.
Super Mario Brothers 2はさすがディスクで下手くそ
Very, very difficult, unfun. I would call it. So our Mario 2 is actually just a reskinning of a game that already existed called Doki Doki Panic.
Yeah.
Everybody knows that.
Yeah.
I can speedrun this game in 15 minutes.
Wow.
Get you...
Using whistles?
Yeah. Whistles. And you do know that any white block you can disappear behind.
Really?
Yeah.
I did not know that.
I thought it was just a couple.
No, it's any white block.
Wow.
It's only relevant for a few.
Yeah.
I rarely ever saw Luigi in this game because I never play this two-player. I'm pretty sure in the original he is just a Mario clone that's green.
They really did a nice job of updating this too, like with that cool background that scrolls differently.
It's great.
I'm at always gonna battle. Keith initiated battle mode.
The worst part about this game was trying to just actually play it and then having brothers who...
But now Keith lost his star.
But now I get to play level 2.
That's an interesting mechanic, the idea that you can fight your way to,
play original Mario Brothers from like Atari generation.
The arcade game, yeah.
Oh, these graphics look great on this, don't they?
I'm also going to pay lip service real quick to what I thought were amazing Saturday morning cartoons based on Mario. There was obviously the Super Mario Brothers Super Show, which was based on Mario 1 and 2.
Yep.
But then there was The Adventures of Super Mario Brothers 3.
Oh, I loved the opening.
King Koopa is back with the Koopa Kids.
Everyone thought King Koopa had left the Mushroom Kingdom. King Koopa was back with the greatest danger ever known, his Koopa Kids.
All right, well, that's one of my absolute favorites. If you're gonna make a small collection of SNES games, highly recommend. Next up, Earthbound.
This is one of those cartridges that people are looking for.
The cheapest copy of this on eBay right now for an official one is $277.
Yeah.
A lot of them were made. It wasn't a rare cartridge.
But I think it's probably the highest value cartridge for a game that everybody would really like to play. It's been on Virtual Console.
Yes.
It's been on the SNES Classic. You can play the game.
Yeah, there's no real reason to buy the cartridge unless you're making a collection. If I was forming a collection today, I probably wouldn't even own this. It's way too expensive. In the 90s especially, weirdness was kind of in vogue. And this game is really kind of weird and off-kilter. I just love it. One of the rarest versions of this game is to have it complete with box and the player's guide. The box was huge, had a player's guide inside, and infamously some scratch and sniff stickers.
I used to subscribe to Nintendo Power when I was a child, and I remember where they were advertising Earthbound. The section of the magazine about it had a scratch and sniff. It was vile. It smelled so bad, and it made you like your fingernail smell disgusting
I bet you
for the whole day.
The ultra wealthy Illuminati types somewhere deep in the mountains are scratch and sniffing the Earthbound thing. Each one of those, it's the last one.
Yep.
And so it's a very, it's like an ultra,
privilege.
it's like a status thing. Like, I scratch and sniff these.
I ate Panda Bear, and then I washed it down with scent of Earthbound. You know.
The marketing was all that really counterculture kind of stuff. I don't know, there was this another thing called OK Soda around that time that was also counterculture. Go against the machine in an obvious
It's
way.
like Gen X knows it's being marketed to.
Yeah.
So it's like, well, we know we're marketing to you too.
Yeah, so it's fine, because we're in on it.
Yeah.
There were a lot of video game commercials for like PS1 and PS2 where the announcer on the commercial was really low energy. So he'd be like, be the only bunny with a gun.
It's no big deal. Have fun.
He's training for his biggest adventure yet. Oh yeah. One of 36 weapons and gadgets not fit for this world. Rated T for teen.
Conker's Bad Fur Day. Available now.
Put a little effort in it.
Nah. Gen X, man. Slacker generation.
Gen X.
Yep.
What happened to you guys?
A hangover's never pretty, but a squirrel with a hangover, that's just obscene. Conker's Bad Fur Day. Rated M for mature.
I just love this game. This was one of my absolute favorites, and it looks like it locked up or
maybe this is part of the marketing.
Yeah.
Rated T for teen.
Right from the very beginning of this, you get the funky, like, you get the static on the screen. It makes you think, oh, adjust your set. There's something wrong with it. It's all messed up.
Ah, so there's like an Andy Kaufman.
Yeah.
People will think their TV is broken. They'll bang on the television and they won't be able to fix it.
This was actually my cartridge that I played on, which still has the save just before the last
Doesn't that
boss.
give you I put my Chrono Trigger in last year and my save files are still there. I got like a rush out of it.
It makes you slightly emotional. It's like you're talking to your young self.
It is. Like you did it.
I hope everything's gonna be great.
There was a day in which I saved here, and that was the last time I played.
Do you feel a little connected to young Junt?
I do a little.
So obviously, a lot of people who've never played Earthbound probably know Ness and friends from Smash Brothers.
Yes.
Smash Brothers has been really useful in keeping some of the stuff alive.
The thing that I really loved about this game was just how quirky it was and how much humor there was in it.
And that's a tricky thing, I think, for a developer to do because they're not always funny people necessarily.
No. The battle system was also kind of fun too. You get these indicators that as you attack things and as they attack you, like they kind of scroll down like their number counters.
Hearing this music makes me feel like I'm on school vacation and it's hot out and I have a headache. I don't know if I'm having fun or not, but
I'm having a hard summer vacation day as a child. And obviously your family wants you to get out of the house and stop playing them damn video games. And you're like, I am satisfied not being in the freaking sun.
So I remember when we got Super Mario RPG, somehow I ignored all the calls to go outside. And I realized I spent the entire game playing Mario RPG while my two brothers were outside doing garden work with my mom.
Whoa.
Now,
How did you get away with
no
that?
one ever said anything to me, but I got the feeling that I was public enemy #1 of that house.
My dad would start to like slam the door harder as he went in and out of the house. And there'd be more stomping. And you just start to get that anxiety of like, I should.
You know, the thing is, like, if you want me to leave the house, just say so.
Yeah.
Don't be the child and slam the door.
I have a child now, and I know exactly how it would go. I go, all right, it's time to go. Time to put away the game.
Mm-hmm.
Not my dad. Stomp, 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 slam, slam, slam.
He's not telling you to stop, so you're not going to, but your anxiety levels are starting to slowly increase.
The lawnmower outside would get louder somehow. The grass would get cut harder.
Bulldozers showed up.
Eventually my mom would be like, your father really wants your help? He's been trying to tell you for 2 hours.
This was like one of the only games that was set in a semi-realistic world.
That's kind of fun.
Whereas a lot of these games you're playing like...
A lot of fantasy worlds.
A lot of fantasy worlds. Just a great game. I had a ton of fun with it.
So there it is. John's got an Earthbound cartridge.
I do.
Don't we know it?
Frankie, my next game has kind of been done to death, but I still cannot leave it off this list. Final Fantasy VI, Final Fantasy III US edition.
Yeah.
I played this at release. A friend of mine had it. So we played a lot of it together, like just wasting Saturday and Sunday afternoons and mornings and late into the nights. A great game.
Really good RPGs were great bonding experience for the right kinds of friends.
Yeah.
Even though they weren't two-player games, obviously, it was a lot of fun to decide together where we're going, what we're doing next.
Mm-hmm. There's a two-player mode in this game too. It's pretty light two-player. During a battle, you can both control characters.
To me, that sounds like a way to start arguments.
This game really started the trend of having a powerful Squaresoft introduction to a game. It starts to tell you the story. I mean, Link to the Past did it a little bit, but this gives you like a full graphic and sound experience.
I'll be honest, I never got into the Final Fantasy games because it felt like the bar was a little high to get into them. Can I just jump into the third one, for instance, or?
Yeah.
Yeah, you absolutely could.
I know people love that 7th one for the PlayStation.
Yep.
I remember the commercials for it, and I was like, that looks pretty
Like the greatest story ever known is not coming to a theater near you or something like that.
Yeah.
The most anticipated epic adventure of the year will never come to a theater near you. Final Fantasy VII.
Remember the Final Fantasy Spirits Within movie?
Yes.
That was supposed to be like, they're gonna be CG stars. The idea was there's gonna be a CG model who will be in other CG movies and she'll be your new movie star.
Yeah.
That didn't happen.
That did not happen.
We're not going to need actors anymore.
Yeah.
You know, and watch the movie again.
I love these futurists. What makes it one of the best SNES games?
Incredible music and sound and story. That's really the whole package.
I think that in terms of narrative, this game far surpassed any game that ever occurred, at least on consoles. Without this game, you don't have Final Fantasy VII. You don't have epic narratives that came after.
Exactly.
Which I think hitherto wasn't considered the domain of video games.
Yeah. Interestingly, there's no main character in this game, correct?
There is no single main character. There's some kind of centralized villains, but you can kind of form the party however you like. One of the most interesting things is that the villain wins halfway through this game, and that really kind of changes the story tone and makes the heroes kind of go like, oh, you know, we've kind of failed. Let's regroup and try again.
Yeah, it's like Infinity War.
Yeah.
At halfway through.
Yeah.
And then you're on your end game. After this game, I think every RPG has an epic twist halfway through.
Yeah.
Because they did such a good job and it resonated with so many people.
What else you got?
So this one's a little bit unusual. The only Japanese-only game in my set, Super Mario P-Cross.
I have no idea what it is. It's not some Mario game that I somehow didn't know existed.
My guess is it's a puzzle game that has pictures of Mario in the background.
Correct?
Yes, that's kind of true. The Game Boy version did come out in the US, and the Game Boy version came before this. This is the Super P-Cross.
The music is groovy.
Mario's Super Picross.
Super Mario Super Picross.
Yes. I'll just show you the basic concept of this game because people might not be familiar with this one.
Very nice looking graphic of Mario himself.
It is nice.
So I'm gonna just do a very simple one.
What's with the hand going?
It's like that kid in Back to the Future 3 who's pointing at his
Please, your future hasn't been written yet.
It has Mario mode, which tells you when you make a mistake, okay? Or Wario mode, which does not tell you when you make a mistake, but you have to get it perfect.
Oh, okay.
So you have these number patterns, and these numbers tell you how many to carve out. Carving all 15 on this bottom row, because this is a 15 wide puzzle. Carving 14 on this one, but because I've got one on the bottom, it must be these 14. And then once you've carved the whole picture, it's solved.
You have to draw the picture?
You have to, yes, eventually a picture will form, and the columns and the rows give you clues. It's kind of like Minesweeper, where like there's a 2, so you know that you're touching 2 mines.
Why do you like this?
What? Hold on.
I mean, he likes Tetris more than Link to the Past.
Okay, so this is the way that they start. They start as a question mark. I'm gonna pick this one.
I love that you think you're gonna turn me around on this. You're like, hang on, there's a question mark. There's 3 blocks. There's 5
No, the
pictures
show
of
gets
5.
really good. You just gotta wait till season 5.
This game is a lot of fun. I can't quite explain it to you.
It's one of your favorites.
Everybody's got their kinks.
Yeah.
All right, so we got 6 blocks. There's 2 question marks, okay? You gotta pick
Here's
3
a super
exclamation points.
simple puzzle, okay, Frankie? You mark bad ones with the yellow button, okay? So we know there's nothing on this top row. We can mark them all out. And this one has 8 carved.
It's a guessing game.
Using the maths.
There's some math involved.
It's likelihoods.
It is likelihoods.
It's fun to guess probabilities.
You will eventually get to a point where you say, oh no, it could go either way, and you have to make a guess. Maybe if you have a level where, like, clearly this is Mario's nostril.
See, I've solved it. It's the Japanese character Ro.
Look, I'm charmed. It's very Junt.
All right, so I think that's enough for that one.
Yeah, I'd say so.
Final game, and I know you're gonna give me crap for it because it's another puzzle game.
3 puzzle games?
Tetris
and
Attack.
Tetris.
But this game has nothing to do with Tetris.
It's a good game.
Again, another kind of game that Mario was just slapped onto, really has nothing to do with Mario.
And not even Mario. When Yoshi eventually became his own brand.
Did this game come out after Yoshi's Island? Because I just heard Yoshi's Island music.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
I can't believe you didn't put Yoshi's Island in here. You're like, well, I wouldn't want it to be redundant, but I put in 3 Tetris games.
I wanted to select games that I really liked that are a little bit not just the obvious top 6 you can Google on a list.
Look, Mario Picross belongs there. It belongs in like an underfunded school classroom.
It belongs in a museum.
That belongs in a museum. So do you.
Which side am I, right or left?
You're gonna be that side.
Right. You want to get 4 in a row. 3 at least, and then, you know, the more the merrier.
So this is like a Candy Crush or something like that.
You can only flip 2 pieces at once.
So the more combos I make, the more junk Frankie has to deal
And
with.
if they hit the top, he loses.
Yes.
There's no vertical
No
flipping?
vertical.
It's really good Yoshi's Island music.
Is that what it is?
Yeah, it is what it is.
The other thing that's really good about this game is it's got a pretty impressive technical engine. It has to do a lot of kind of calculation work on things, and it manages to do it quite well considering the limited power of the Super Nintendo.
Who's winning? What level are you in?
Keith is referring to when a confused uncle would walk by a video game and ask, who's winning?
They're playing an RPG, and they're like, yeah, what level are you in? And it's like, it doesn't work that way.
Yeah, the nerdy child would over-explain the game that he didn't really want to hear about in the first place. I run into that all the time with people where, like, I try to make conversation with them, and then they're like, no, it's this.
So
and I'm like, I didn't care in the first place. I thought I'd be like, oh, so you went on vacation? They're like, no.
That's funny, because that happens a lot at work.
Right? All right, well, John's beating me.
Yep. But you put up a really good fight that second round.
Yeah, I mean, I'll see you in real Tetris.
Yeah. There's one honorable mention I have, but I don't know if we want to go into it.
Sure.
What is it? Is it burger time?
For those who are not familiar with these, what are called EverDrive carts, we didn't mention they do not emulate. They actually just present the ROM on the flash card directly to the hardware. They're a bit more expensive. I think one of these would go for like $200.
Yeah, $200. This is actually called an SD2 SNES. This emulates special chips.
It probably can play all the Super Nintendo games, so
Yes.
most of them.
Almost all. A game that I found that I've been playing actively, that I like a lot. I didn't actually find it until I got this device and we started doing the show. Kind of redid an assessment of all the Japanese RPGs and found one that's called Marvelous.
Now, you're playing this right now, or you used to play it?
I'm actively playing it. There was a developer at Nintendo who joined after Link from the Past was made, but really, really wanted to make a Link to the Past game. So this game uses the Link to the Past engine but takes a completely different story and upgrades that engine to add more capabilities to it.
Do you like it better than Link to the Past?
No, I don't think so. That game has a lot of nostalgia, this one doesn't, but this is a really fun game.
So you'd categorize this under Hidden Gem?
Yes.
It's called Marvelous?
It's called Marvelous, Another Treasure Island. There's a really good translation for it. It was not released in the US. It actually uses a special chip, but it only uses it for decoding compressed graphics so it can be a huge game.
It's really neat that if you were developing a game back in the cartridge days, if you wanted to put in the investment, you could have a chip so you could get more out of
this system.
This was less common back then where they would just wholesale rip off an engine, right?
Yeah.
It was kind of like an early ROM hack.
Indeed. If you're just getting into Super Nintendo, download the emulated copy of this. This game is a lot of fun. You'll have a lot of fun playing it. I certainly have.
So what I saw today were RPGs and puzzle games.
Yeah.
One platformer, the ultimate platformer.
Yes, there's so many great games out there, but these are the ones that were most important to me. But what about the games that I think are the most technically amazing?
Does that include music?
Yes, I consider sound primarily to be music. I've got 2 that I feel are best in graphics, 2 that I feel are best in sound, and 2 that I feel are really solid in both. The first one was definitely a contender for my favorite games list as well. It is Super Mario RPG. The perfect merge of Squaresoft plus Nintendo really collaborating. It was a pretty unlikely partnership.
And have they done it since?
No, just after this game, Squaresoft left Nintendo's platforms and went to PlayStation. It's kind of sad because this is an amazing collaboration.
I think Squaresoft accomplished their objective though. They wanted to expose the RPG genre to more people.
Yes.
This was my first RPG that I ever played.
Really?
Because it was a Mario game.
Yep.
Square has since sunk their teeth and claws into it. So I'll still play their bad Final Fantasy 15 games.
Did you have a moment when you first played Super Mario RPG where you were like, this is not a Mario game?
I have a friend who used to hate this game, and it was because he rented it, thinking, oh, it's a new Mario game. I get to jump on things. It wasn't a Mario game. It was an RPG. Right. So for many years, he had a dislike for this game until he played it again.
There were some super cool concepts in here. Just like in any Mario game, you can get a star. In random encounter battles that you get where you run into a monster, you go into a battle, you just win when you have a star. You just go right through them. I always thought that was such a fun little detail.
And you still gain the experience points for it. So you want to rapidly hit as many people as possible.
Exactly. This is one game that I think has not only the best graphics, but best sound. So why don't we take a brief look at the graphics first.
Did they require any special chips? Hardware?
Yes. This actually was one of the first games to use SA1, which is a complete second processor for the Super Nintendo that runs at twice the speed of the one that's built in. So it actually dual processes with the one inside the Super Nintendo to run this game.
And I do believe this game was a little bit more expensive than most cartridges when it came out.
It was $69.99 new. This was actually one of the very last games I was ever gifted. It must have been when I was 15. I got it for Christmas or a birthday or something. After that, I started buying my own games. I bought myself a PlayStation with money I had earned from a summer job. The 3D graphics aren't rendered, they're simulated.
Pre-rendered?
Yes, they are pre-rendered graphics, but they still look pretty incredible.
It's the Donkey Kong Country style of graphics.
Though I think Donkey Kong Country actually does it a little better than this game. Square was not the expert on that. Rare really was. When I played these games as a child, I would always name them what the character's name was.
This is Bowser's Castle.
In this game, Bowser's Keep.
Yes, Bowser's Keep, that's right. Isometric view, jumping control just like a platformer. You can avoid the monsters certainly, but they will come after you. And once you go into that battle, you're there. Timed hits.
Because of this game, I thought all RPGs had time hits. So to this day, no matter what game I play, I'm always timing my hits.
Which is also how the Paper Mario series works. It's clear enough that Nintendo was like, let's keep this Nintendo RPG thing going with the Paper Mario series, even if we don't have Square on our...
That's right. They really did try to, and they were successful for the most part. Those were some good games, but I think this one's a little bit more magical. I do want to also showcase a couple of my favorite songs from this game. I'm going to use my SD2 SNES, which has a special feature which allows us to just play music from the game. Because there's another little CPU that handles the music in a Super Nintendo. They capture all the data in that CPU in its state, and then they put it into a file called an SPC file. That actually has the music in it. There's so much music in this game, first of all. This is one of my absolute favorite songs. It's one of the battle themes. Really strong, like really get you pumped for the battle. You said this was on your workout playlist, right?
It is on my workout playlist. It's Smithy Phase 1.
Yes.
You start rocking the elliptical harder.
Oh, yeah, when I go for a run or something, yeah, something like that.
Driving bass beat, really great. The victory theme is just a great combination of a Nintendo mindset about a Mario song plus Squaresoft. Take a listen.
I know this one.
Yep. Really happy and upbeat and full of energy.
It doesn't get old, in my opinion.
Yeah, that's the mark of a really great piece of music in a game, right?
My two favorite songs in this game are probably just the standard boss battle music.
Okay.
And I also love Nimbus Land.
Nimbus Land.
It's just nice.
Little pan flute.
Little pan flute, you're in the clouds, you've like made it to this area you've been trying to get to for a while.
This was like the peak of Super Nintendo music. This was around the time the N64 was coming out, so everybody had figured out the best techniques and best strategies to get the absolute best sound quality out of this system.
There's kind of like a softness to SNES music.
Yeah.
That like, where I would describe maybe Sega Genesis music as a little harder.
Yes.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
On the Sega Genesis, they had different capabilities in terms of what they could generate for sound versus the Super Nintendo. The Super Nintendo was completely sample-based. So if you want a sound of a flute, you just record a flute, whereas on the Genesis, you could sample sounds, and they definitely did, but the most common mode was to use like kind of synthesize-y sounds, like keyboardy sounds.
And it made it sound more like grunge music.
Yeah,
Or,
when you talk about like Sega sound effects versus Super Nintendo, I think like Mario Brothers music versus like X-Men, where it's like
yeah. Dun, 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 bum, bum, ba-da-da-da. Apparently the composer for Mario RPG, she also did Kingdom Hearts, the Mario and Luigi series to this day, and like Street Fighter 2.
Yeah, it's just some incredible music here. Let me give you one more. This is the Big Battle theme. Battle themes are like the ones that really kind of get you stressed up.
They make you want to fear the enemy.
Exactly. Frankie, next up on my list is Yoshi's Island. An incredible game. Indeed, take a look at this shirt. This is just wonderful. This is in one of my best categories for graphics.
Yeah.
It has great sound too.
Also a special chip game?
Yes, it is.
Oh, it is.
This uses the SA1 as well, but it uses its graphics capabilities. It has a real kind of crayon, childy visual style.
And the idea of like children's arts and crafts being associated with Yoshi probably started here.
Look at how much detail there is in that animation of that stork. Just really beautiful effects.
They must have knew they had something on their hands with Yoshi when they released him in Super Mario World.
At the time of Super Mario World, he was really just nothing, you know? Just an add-on to give the game a little more depth.
A power-up.
Yeah, this is the game in which he really came into his own. Really cool opening island.
And some of that 360 animation of the island, that's unusual for a 2D system.
Very much so. The number of capabilities that were added by this SA1 chip is just some incredible stuff. There's a level in which it's called Touch Fuzzy Get Dizzy. And you touch these little blobs and the whole screen kind of shifts and waves in this way that's really disorienting and fun.
Even just like all that foreground?
Yeah, to have so many different sprites on the screen at the same time, that was something that the SA1 enabled.
Yeah, and there's no buffering, there's no flickering.
Nothing.
I love this game.
Yeah, and the sound is excellent, there's no question. Yeah. This egg mechanic is one of the most fun things where you shoot things in the sky with your eggs, or you shoot monsters with them or anything, and get special bonuses.
Now, what's interesting is the eggs aren't actually Yoshi's babies. They're his poops.
It's to try to get away from the animal cruelty element of it.
Yeah.
It's got a lot of hard poops.
Yeah, he does.
It does. It has a lot of imagination.
It really does. Like this cool growing flower idea that kind of, you expose it with a seed and it grows up.
What I love is look at the interface. When you need the information, it will be presented, but when you don't.
Exactly, a beautifully simplified design, no score, no nothing like that.
That's really elegant design where there's a lot of complexity to the game, but a lot of simplicity in the user interface.
Indeed.
Any software that gets developed in the future, they should talk to the developers of Yoshi's Island first and be like, what's the best way for me to present information to the user?
Another cool thing about this game that kind of started with this game was the idea of scores for levels. Every level that you complete, you get a score out of 100 points.
To let you know how well you played it.
Yeah, exactly. And then you can go back and try for a higher score. I'm not super into like the newer Yoshi games and stuff. So.
Seems like it started aiming for a much younger crowd.
Oh yeah, this was aimed for everyone. You know?
But this isn't an easy game. This is harder than all the Mario games previous to it, in my opinion.
Yeah, indeed. A lot of big, heavy sprites with cool looking graphics.
Screen shaking action.
Yeah, screen shaking stuff. Anything that they could do with that expanded chip, they did.
I don't get it, man. Nintendo will develop like something that really hits, and then they never quite recapture it. Two other really big examples of that would be F-Zero and Star Fox.
Yeah.
Blue.
I love these sound effects.
Shall we move on?
Sure.
Hard to pull it away?
Yeah.
Oh yeah. So let me tell you about our next game, which is in my category for graphics. Secret of Mana 3, Seiken Densetsu 3. Never released in the US, sadly. Some of the most beautiful graphics that ever went into Super Nintendo RPGs showed up in this game. There are excellent translations of this game, fan translations of this game out there. If you're gonna play it, definitely get one of those. Having a cartridge doesn't really make any sense. I happen to have a Japanese one in my collection. Let's take a look at the opening intro. Sekai ga maru de...
Snowman. I see a snowman.
Snowmanu? Does this display what you wanted to show us?
No.
Because this isn't a game that I have ever played, I'm fighting back the will to just make fun of it.
You have xenophobia as it relates to games?
Sure. I'm gonna be tribal where I can. It's got a Final Fantasy VI vibe right there.
Secret of Mana Cross has live battle.
I want to know who designed the monsters and some of the animation, because a lot of things going on are very reminiscent of Chrono Trigger sprites and how like they react when you attack them.
Second one is definitely the one that I played the most. This one is more renowned for its graphics in terms of overall capabilities.
2 was also a Japanese-only one.
No, 2 is the one that we call Secret of Mana.
Oh.
So this game, it's called Lufia 2, Rise of the Sinistrals.
I have not heard of that.
This game I have selected for sound.
You ever heard of this game?
I have heard of it, but I've never played it.
Great epic music to get you into the game, get you really excited about it.
Some striking opening graphics,
Yeah,
certainly.
this song really does give you a pretty good mood of the music in this really kind of heavy string.
When you were writing music for your RPG, did you take any influence from any of these?
Oh yeah, absolutely. More so games like this, actually.
A lot of string minor chords?
Yes.
I'm just amused by the dialogue.
What's it saying?
Who should rule? We are the humans. We should rule. Simple, but it's
written by an elementary school?
Yeah.
The translation was not good. For some reason, they thought that they had to use this huge font, and that meant that everything had to fit in 2 lines. So let's put on a couple of my favorite songs from that game. Of course, you know my love for battle themes, so here's one of my favorite battle themes from Lufia 2. Big, powerful battle theme.
Oh!
Really kit drums. Yeah, let's hear another one, shall we? This is one of my favorites. This is a castle theme. This is like you're walking through the grand castle.
Today you will meet the queen.
It does sound like that, doesn't it?
This is more like Optimistic Castle.
Yes.
Or you know, like those like hipster bands that play like only video game music, and they're like, "Hey, we're 8-bit" or whatever. These songs feel like they would lend well to a crap band like that.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Let's have the shrine theme.
Close your eyes.
Here's another great song. It's called The Saviors of Those on Earth.
It's a very Japanese title. Probably still in the intro, I'm guessing.
Yeah.
You knew it. You're like, it's in a kick.
Yeah, like 4 stanzas or whatever.
Very nice.
Yeah, very cool. The next one on my list is Donkey Kong Country 3. All 3 of them are very good. 3 has the kind of final evolution of rare style, the peak of the pre-rendered game genre.
Do you think that modern consoles have such a quantity of classic games per system?
No. There were only a couple systems, right? Now we have more systems plus PC. PC is a very easy option now.
Yeah.
You know, where back then PC was a very small portion of the market. Now there's so many systems. You can do phone, you can do that.
Yep.
And consoles come out much faster now. So we don't get to the end of life. Almost all these games that we're talking about are near the end of the system's life when the full capabilities of the system get utilized. The system that came after this, the N64, was so different that basically every game on that had to look 3D to sell the idea. Very cool graphics. Definitely looks like 3D. They're really using a lot of cool tricks to make this 2D game look 3D.
I love that sound effect. Oh!
Kind of fun that they reinvented the idea of Donkey Kong, who was once kind of just a villain of Mario's.
Yeah, everything's super fluid in terms of the pre-rendered stuff.
I would see people play this game and I would think that's why I want a Super Nintendo.
Yeah.
This came out right around the same time the Sega 32X was released.
Yeah.
And everybody was like, why? Did you see what the Super Nintendo's doing?
Yeah, exactly.
I was reading about when Rare made the first Donkey Kong Country, and the president was like, wow, this is what we can do with the Nintendo 64? And they were like, no.
This is on the Super Nintendo. And this game doesn't even have a special chip in it. And every level kind of has a cool, distinct style to it, too.
Video game graphics were still evolving in a major way back then.
Yep.
Graphics, in some ways, was like the ultimate criteria for judging a game. Probably the wrong criteria.
But it was the standard that people used.
Let me go switch to the cartridge. We can take a listen to a couple pieces. This is a great one. very ambient kind of new age music.
If I didn't know any better, I think it was Echo the Dolphin.
Yeah.
This is probably at water level.
Yeah, but definitely a little bit of a different direction than a lot of that heavy string kind of stuff that we see in a lot of RPGs.
We will rock you.
A lot of use of samples. For my final game in the music category, we have, of course, Final Fantasy VI.
Which we already talked about in your favorite games.
It's a cornerstone of video game music that I felt I had to feature it again. We've seen what the game looks like. Why don't we just go right into the songs?
Yep.
This is the song Final Fantasy VI iconic. I love the lyrics to it.
Yeah, okay.
Tony Danza. Tony Danza. Tony Danza. Tony Danza.
Oh my.
Tony Danza. Tony Danza. And that is the lyrics to Final Fantasy VI.
Tony Danza. Tony Danza. Tony Danza.
Here, let me play you another one of my absolute favorites. This is the Phantom Train.
This is very Final Fantasy.
Yeah. Another one. This is your boy Junt.
Coming to you live from Westport, Massachusetts. It's so like.
Yeah. Whimsical.
Indeed.
I feel like I'm in like a Victorian castle.
Yes.
Then you get some nice counterplay.
Well then, let them eat cake.
Wouldn't you? Wouldn't they just love some cake? Now we got into the full like
fake conflict.
Exactly. It would be completely unacceptable for me to not mention the opera from Final Fantasy.
Wow. Vocals, kind of.
Kind of. And what they have is they have synchronized timed on screen words. Because obviously vocals were not really feasible in this cartridge.
So it definitely evokes opera.
Yeah, and at the time this was like unbelievable to me. And of course they did perform it, you know, as an actual opera.
Did they?
Yeah.
Who's they?
No,
them.
Folks in Japan, the country of Japan. Just about every song in this game is incredible. I encourage you to go check it out. We can't possibly cover them all here.
That's the end of John's games, but we've been talking about Chrono Trigger for 2 episodes.
It's the best game on the system. I love this opening. There's nothing that gets me going more in a video game than this. Maybe Link to the Past, when the Triforce comes together. It has great sound, has great music. Better than everything else you played so far, except for maybe with Yoshi's Island or Mario RPG. With some of the previous samples, Frankie and I were just being polite and trying to like get into it, but like they were just like, okay, this is a little dumb. Listen to this song right here. This is the theme of Chrono Trigger and the theme of the protagonist, Chrono. Adventurous, amazing song.
Watching the intro again, the graphics are pretty darn good.
Dragon Quest, Dragon Ball Z, Chrono Trigger, the character designs were all from the same person.
I think you might have skipped over this game.
Yeah, I
think you should give it another try. And you liked its sequel, the PlayStation Chrono Cross.
I did. It was one of my favorites.
There's not a single song in this game that is boring.
I've got a book here that talks all about it. Here in the SNES Omnibus.
Oh, that's cool.
Milady.
They're going for that because you're in medieval times now at this point in the game.
The developers of Final Fantasy and Dragon Quest collaborated to make this.
This is a song you hear early in the game.
Yep. It's probably going to be the first song you really listen to because your character wakes up, you go straight to the fair, and you probably have to spend maybe 15 to 30 minutes if this is your first time playing the game.
Yeah.
Chrono Trigger original sound version is 3 CDs worth of 16-bit bliss. They released the soundtrack on CD.
On a few games they did that, including Final Fantasy eventually.
I like this song. This only plays a couple of times. So in every RPG, you usually have your boss music, and you have your mini boss and your boss battle.
Yeah.
And then sometimes you have like this is a major fight in the game. And this song usually plays.
If there had not been D&D, do you think RPGs get developed the way they ultimately were developed?
I think there was
it's different.
Huge amount of influence from D&D.
Yeah.
I would always try to get the original player's guides with my games. Sometimes they'd add it on. Oh, do you want it for 10 extra bucks? You can get a player's guide. The Nintendo first-party ones are excellent. The one notable one that's missing from this little collection here is the Link to the Past player's guide, which is a great book. The first one that I really like here, which is the Mario Paint guide. I think this is a critical piece to have along with Mario Paint. It gives you so many ideas of cool things you can make with it. Not only is it giving you some amazing examples of what you can do in Mario Paint, it's giving you a little art history lesson. We've got the 1900 to 1940s, a Picasso work here, Crying Woman, a Kandinsky, Dali's famous melting clocks, probably professionally done by Nintendo staff artists. Got a recreation of a little bit of Disney down here. Album covers recreated in Mario Paint.
So impressive.
Yeah, this is the Star Spangled Banner. You're getting educated about the essentials of animation, about music.
And Mario Paint's really stood the test of time. I mean, to this day, people create incredible things like Bohemian Rhapsody on Mario Paint.
Somebody actually made a program that lets you write music like Mario Paint, but with more sounds and with sharps and flats, which Mario Paint couldn't do.
My favorite one I've ever seen online was the Mario Paint version of Africa by Toto.
Yeah, it's pretty fun. Stamps that you can use to make Mario World animation. You'd have to draw them in by hand, and I definitely did this. I remember my friend Gary and I sitting in his basement with this book, programming them into Mario.
And by programming, you mean like you
pixel
by pixel.
Pixel by pixel draw them in.
Homestar Runner was started on Mario Paint. I feel like the notion of make your own in Nintendo games really went away after Mario Paint and kind of came back with Mario Maker.
Yeah.
It is like the spiritual successor.
Yeah. Paper Mario is to Mario RPG as Mario Maker is to Mario Paint.
Yeah.
Original character work here. The mother cleaning up the house and looking displeased that the son's just sitting there watching TV. Street Fighter 2 graphics, so you can make your own kind of battles and stuff. A ton of songs that you can put in the Nutcracker Suite.
As a musician yourself, did you ever compose anything
Absolutely.
original?
The capabilities were kind of limited. The length is fairly short. This is the length you got, basically, and no sharps, no flats. You just changed the key of the song into a key that had no flats, no sharps, usually C, which made everything sound pretty the same. Yeah, Mario Painty, but still. And then at the end, there's a gallery of art. Stevie's Wonders. This is, Steven Spielberg's.
If Nintendo ever had like a museum to itself, it should include like one room of just Mario Paint art.
Oh, absolutely. Okay, so that's probably one of my favorite ones. This is the Super Game Boy Guide. And what they did in this book was give you an introduction to what the capabilities of the Super Game Boy were, and then options in terms of what you had for color palettes. So you could customize the color palettes that were used for monochrome games, just kind of encouraging you, it's kind of selling you games. Now that you have your Super Game Boy, you may want to consider all of these awesome games.
Kind of a reintroduction to the Game Boy, maybe.
Yeah, Link's Awakening with the different palettes and showing you how it could look. This one, we've already covered it briefly, but I just want to talk on it one more time. It's just filled with the most amazing graphic art, amazing facts about the games. Look at this double fold out, which is just incredible.
I bought that for $10 at a retro game shop.
Yeah, these don't actually go for all that much. Yeah. They are mildly collectible. The next one I have here is Donkey Kong Country one. This one is one of the thinner ones, and this also wasn't a first-party game, so it didn't get the same kind of attention, but it still gives you a complete guide of who all the characters are. Kind of acts basically like an extended manual. But you can definitely see that the material is a lot thinner. This is much cheaper paper. This is how these players' guys sadly ended up in the end. Brittle, and it's starting to age poorly because of the acid. You know, you have your standard level guides in here.
I love them putting all the different screens together, so just at a glance, you can see the whole level.
Secrets and tips. That's what they really got to sell you. You know, oh, do you want to know what to do? Here.
I think it wasn't until the N64 that they started mailing Nintendo Power subscribers VHS promos. Mm-hmm. Keith and I got a Star Fox one and a Diddy Kong Racing one in the mail, and we would quote them all the time as if it was like real entertainment.
Pizza for Bob.
Yeah.
You, Bob?
Yeah, but I didn't order any pizza.
Pizza for Bob.
Are you, Bob?
Yeah, but, I didn't order any pizza.
When you're young, a video game advertisement is just another opportunity to consume more video game media.
Exactly.
It's like being excited to see the new Apple showcase.
Oh, E3 next week.
Or E3, or even a movie trailer. It's just like, that's an ad.
Next up, we have the Yoshi's Island Player's Guide. This is really focused in on the game, divided into categories, you know, bonus challenges, bonus games, bosses. Still some nice art that's kind of reflective of the game, but not really super aligned with the visual style. Like this brick element in here, the game was never that visually rough. It was always much softer.
They're a way of extending the life of the game in some respect.
Yeah.
It's a way to like relate to the game when you're in the car or when you're on the bus.
Oh, I definitely did that. I actually had one of these for Super Mario 3.
I just realized that I used to have this.
This one
right here. As soon as I saw this, I just got hit with a whoa.
So the next one I want to take a look at, really what they are is just advertisements for other Super Nintendo games. As of the time this one was published, which was 1992, it goes through all games that were released and talks about them and gives you kind of an in-depth advertisement for them. And then it also talks about future games that are gonna come. Palettes, comparing the NES to the Super Nintendo, what they can do in terms of color layering, giving you all the technical details.
Suddenly they start slagging off their old system.
Yeah. Yeah, well, this is the new thing, the old one.
We already sold you a few million of those.
Exactly. It has these images that have really nothing to do with games, and then they kind of link them into games that barely make sense. Like they say mat moves, and they talk about wrestling, and then they link to Final Fight, which really didn't have much wrestling at all. It was a shoot 'em up game. So this is a pretty specious link. But then they spend a couple pages on each game, you know, giving you a mini guide for that game, which is pretty cool. So if you have a couple of these games, especially if you had a couple in 1992, this book kind of made sense because it gives you a few tips for the area.
All of these connect you closer to the brand. They make you more of a Nintendo loyalist. Instead of being somebody who just happens to like Chrono Trigger or happens to like Super Mario World, this makes you a Nintendo fan.
Yes.
Nintendo Power was especially effective at that.
Yep. Your book here is part of a 2-volume set called the SNES Omnibus.
Yeah.
It's an incredible set of books that talks about every single US game on the system. Gives you a little overview, gives you guides when it was released, who the publisher was. Excellent information. Very well researched too. A lot better information in this book than there is on Wikipedia, certainly. I really love the summaries in this. This was a fairly expensive book, right?
Yeah, it was like $50 at least.
Yeah, so you're talking for the 2-volume set, that's $100. But if you want to know about a game, it really gives you that and really gives you a little bit of the experience. Not really a guidebook per se. I think this is a really awesome book set. I would love to have this in my collection.
Boogerman.
Boogerman.
On the very back, they got some titles.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, nice.
Excellent games here. Just a beautiful book. Now, this is the Nintendo version of that book, the Super NES Game Guide.
Oddly, not a lot of graphic design on the cover.
I guess they were trying to keep with the style of the Super Nintendo packaging and box. This is 1993. This aims to cover every game at that time. So it's kind of like this player's guide, upgraded, but the game summaries get much smaller because they got a lot more to cover. You basically just get a half page for each game. They have these little boxes on the side which give you the size of the game in megabits. I don't know why everybody cared about that, but it was definitely a key marketing element, like 8 megabit game, which is 1 megabyte, by the way. If it was a save game or a password game, which is actually kind of useful to know, when it came out. And then they have these power meter ratings. Graphics, play control, challenge, theme, and fun. And the ratings are very inflated. Like even the worst game, this game, Arrow the Acrobat, has notoriously awful controls, and they've given it a 2.9 out of 5. This was really just more of an extended advertisement. This is like a catalog, kind of.
It kind of resembles like the Sears wish list for...
It absolutely does. You're really just getting a summary of the game to see, oh, I might like that. And it's divided by category, so it really is just like a catalog saying, Mom, I want Super Caesar's Palace. No, you don't. Still, it's kind of an interesting piece of Nintendoology, you know. The last thing that I want to take a look at in terms of books is the third-party books, and there are tons of these. I have one Brady Games guide. They made tons of these for many different games. This one is Super Secret Codes for a Super Nintendo. It's a cheap, mass-market, black and white print, and you look up the game, and they give you either password codes. For Adventures of Batman and Robin here, this is the sequence you enter to get to various stages. And also, I was just reading in here about a Super Mario Kart trick that I had no idea about, where you can access special cups before you've beaten the previous ones by using a certain controller sequence.
Wow.
Did you buy it at a Scholastic book fair? Because this is the type of book I would expect to see.
Absolutely.
It's not allowed.
Your parents.
My parents would not.
Not a real book.
I mean, we used to have sustained silent reading in the mornings.
Yeah.
And we would always try to get away with reading Nintendo Power or Game Informer or something like that. And they would often be like, that's not what we're talking about.
Yeah, that's not what we're trying to get you to read.
Little Women.
Yeah, Little Women.
All the girls in the class were looking at us like, we understand what to do.
This book is about horses.
Here's one more. An off-brand, just written by two guys, Yoshi's Island Player's Guide. Compare and contrast it with the Nintendo one, it's several steps down. It's monochrome.
Wow, it really sucks the joy out of Yoshi's Island.
It certainly does.
I guess it gives you some sense of what a Yoshi's Island on the Game Boy might feel like.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which
It makes me think, ooh, that'd be cool if this came out on the Game Boy.
Give me one of them.
They've obviously taken photos of a TV, and they're not very sharp. Nintendo ones were almost certainly computer exports, which at the time was quite a complicated process. There's no big expansive maps, it's just individual screenshots from the levels showing you points of interest.
So that's the books.
Yeah, that's my collection of books. That's something I'd still expand because they're still really cheap.
And they don't take up a lot of space.
And they don't take up a lot of space.
So it being the last episode, I wanted to make sure that we were answering any questions or responding to any comments that we thought were interesting.
Sure.
Kevin Smith, our fan Kevin Smith, not the celebrity, but the guy, he said, stoked for this. Also, Chrono Trigger is the best game of all time.
Kevin Smith is correct.
Ferlix Jerlobi says, oh man, I know the feeling of having a partially finished RPG Maker game. Too many ideas, not enough wherewithal to implement them.
Exactly. That's exactly the problem.
Ashley says, yay, please talk about the Lion King game at some point. That was a major part of my childhood.
The Lion King was actually a huge part of my childhood too. It was gifted to my sister and I in a really dry period of SNES games before I had many RPGs at all. And it actually has very nice graphics and pretty good sound.
I don't like the way Simba controls.
No, it controls like mud. I don't think I ever beat it, but I did get to the last level certainly.
I had a couple of Disney games. There was the Aladdin game, first of all. I gotta say, the Genesis version of the Aladdin game is far superior than SNES. I also, on the Genesis, Beauty and the Beast was an interesting marketing challenge for Disney because they didn't know if they should market to girls or boys.
Yep.
And so they just decided to make one game for boys and one game for girls. So they made Roar of the Beast for boys, and that's what I owned.
Yep.
And that also controlled like ass because you were a giant beast that could barely jump. And then they made like, you know, I think it was called like Belle's Adventure or something.
This is for Genesis, right?
Yeah. I don't think there is any SNES Beauty and the Beast game. Nick XL says, it says RGSS102E.dll could not be found. RPG Maker hasn't changed a bit, I see. You tried to install your game and couldn't.
Yes, there's like 3 steps you need to do. You need to install the RMXP runtime package, the RTP. Then you need to install the font package, which I think I gave you. And then you need to install the game. You have to do all 3 steps in that order for it to work.
I think some versions of RPG Maker had an expo option that would package all that stuff together.
They totally did, but I never got far enough in the development that I did that effort.
Parallax says, I've never fired a real gun before. It was painfully obvious.
I get where you're coming from. Like, of course, we don't know how to hold guns. There's another clip on YouTube of someone actually shooting one correctly and totally hitting all the targets and it working just fine. Yeah, I think if we worked on it for a while, we could get better at it and maybe hit a target.
If you had been here to help me, since I'm new, I would have taken your lessons, but
exactly.
In the meanwhile, I just got to be cringy and...
We did the best we could with the skill set that we have.
Which was 0. Bort Simpson pointed out, poor Frankie, right-handed, but left eye dominant. And I never even really knew what that meant.
Yeah, I'm right hand, right eye.
So they suggested that maybe I shoot with my left hand. We also pronounced Jaeger as Jagger, as Big Zeke points out.
Again, anyone like minimally involved in the gun world would absolutely know that, and I would not at all.
On the Crazy Controllers episode, Tempest Fury said the craziest controller has to be the ASCII keyboard controller for the GameCube.
I have one.
It looks like a wave bird, but there's a keyboard in the middle.
It is wacky. That's very wacky.
Ango Tango Fox says, have you seen the HD Mode 7 mod? It was discovered just a week or so ago, and it makes all of the Mode 7 games like Mario Kart and F-Zero look amazing. Mode 7, of course, just makes use of very large images that are warped in some way and then filtered through the original resolution of the NES. So in changing the filtering resolution, they got it so that you can see the full detail of the texture with all the other sprites unchanged.
And they look incredible. It's a really smart optimization. We could have done this years ago. This is not like some new technology enabled this. I remember playing PlayStation 1 emulators, and they would up-res everything. And it would look great. And it's the same idea. The assets that are stored were higher resolution so that when you were zoomed in, they looked good. But then when you zoomed out, they took on a low resolution property because they had to just do the calculations quickly. You improve those calculations, it looks great. I highly recommend you try that out if you're a fan of Mode 7 stuff.
Daniel Rourke pointed out, yep, I just came here to berate you all for never playing a Bomberman game. Like, what the hell did you do with your SNES? It's insane. What other classics have you never played?
I played pretty standard games like Tetris Attack and Tetris, and RPGs, and maybe a platformer or two.
I personally didn't have a Super Nintendo when I was a kid. I was a Sega guy. And so I've gotten exposed to things I'd never seen before. Yeah. You and I, for a little while we were just hanging out at the studio, we played Zombies Ate My Neighbors. I never played that. Kind of fun. I thought it was really fun. People were mad in general, this is a general note, that Jon is hoarding both Mario Paints and SNES consoles.
Look,
buy them yourself.
There are more than 1 million Super Nintendos and more than 1 million copies of Mario Paint, because Mario Paint is one of the million-seller games. That means that I have like 23 over 1 million. If you want to be mad about something, be mad about the fact that I have 9 of the 275 copies of Fun and Games. Every time I see one, I buy one because they're very rare. They didn't make very many at all.
Not valuable, but rare.
Yes, exactly.
You should collect them all.
Music Bookaholic says, certain people will burn in headphones. They will run them at full volume for days at a time.
That's right. And I have done that with speakers before. Not running them at full volume, but running them for like a good 6 hours with a loud bass sound playing or a noise sound playing to kind of break them in. And they say it changes the sound. I could never hear any difference.
And your neighbors feel good about this?
Maybe they do, maybe they don't. I don't know.
And then final comment that I have here, SqueeTube said, does Junt have one of those devices that allows you to load SNES ROMs from 3.5-inch floppy disks?
I do.
Always stuck out as the most out there unofficial SNES peripheral.
So I have 2 of them, and I have one right here. This is not actually the latest generation. This is generation 7. This is called Super UFO. It has a 3.5-inch Sony floppy drive up here, has a cartridge connector up here, and then it fits into the bottom of a Super Nintendo. And then it has a memory card that goes in the bottom here that allows you to basically load the game from the floppy disk into RAM and then run it as if it were the game. It also has a parallel port on the back so that you could download saves out of the system if you wanted to back them up. If you just had ROMs, you could feed the ROM in and not have to do the cartridge and then transfer it to disk. None of them can emulate the special chips though. However, if you plugged in a game with that special chip, for some chips, it could pass the chip through. Didn't work for anything advanced like the SA1, but it was your only way to kind of pirate games at that time.
I know one game was at least 8 megabits.
Yes.
Translating to roughly 8 megabytes. Would that be able to fit on the 1.4 megabyte floppy?
You broke it up into 2
okay.
or 3.
Okay.
The maximum capability of this particular unit is 24 megabit, 3 megabyte. I don't think it could do Final Fantasy VI, for example. I think that's a 4 megabyte game. I used to have right next to this a little array of floppy disks with the games labeled Disk 1, Disk 2, Disk 3, Disk 4.
Well, I mean, that pretty much sums up the collection.
Pretty much. There's some little things hanging around that we didn't really cover, but you've seen the best parts of my collection, the parts that I really wanted to show and present to you.
But there's one last thing to do.
What's that?
I want to see if we can get one shot off in that stupid rifle game.
All right. Let's get it out.
All right, first we're gonna try Yoshi's Safari to see whether or not this thing works with any other Super Scope games. Is this holding it better?
Internet?
I mean, it's just a controller, isn't it?
Yeah, but I don't think it's the same at all in terms of what it did, so.
All right.
No dice there.
No dice.
That's your answer to that question.
The key thing that I heard was stand further away.
So, by the way, I did submit a Freedom of Information Act request to get more information about the contract related to this game. And a very nice gentleman from Georgia called me and informed me that contracts from 1992-93 are not yet digitized. He said they would keep looking, but it's unlikely they would find anything because the amount of effort needed to search manually through the documents is extreme.
Here we go, cringy Fran. They're right about it feels better for me to shoot with my left.
Aim at the blue cross and pull the trigger.
Already I can aim it better.
It's already so much nicer, at least it appears to be.
Yep, it totally is.
Press start to begin.
Yeah, no wind or anything. Remember this?
Yes. Yeah, I do.
You were off the screen. When the red border comes on, you're off the screen.
Can you point the TV at me more centrally? Yeah.
Prepare to fire.
How is that off the screen?
You probably calibrated it wrong now that the television is...
Do you want to calibrate again?
Let's calibrate again. Oh yeah, that's different. It's a lot different. I wish there was a crosshair on the actual game.
Invalid shot group.
Would anybody else like to try? Have you ever tried it?
I don't think I've tried it before.
I'm going to calibrate for you, EJ, okay?
So that feels pretty in control, right?
Invalid shot group.
So
the answer is we still cannot do it.
So we end JuntSNES how we began it. invalid shot groups. I want to thank Keith for being an awesome co-host.
You've been a great contributor.
Thanks, it was a lot of fun.
We want to thank EJ for the beautiful camera work, which a lot of you have also commented on, how great that was. Zach and Matt for helping to set up the set and lug everything in here. We hope that it acts as a snapshot of this collection and of that era of Super Nintendo.
Indeed.
Are there any SNES cartridges for like exercising? Weren't there some like...
Yes, there's one that connects to an exercise bike that I do not have.
An exercise bike?
Yeah.
I could have sworn there was a big pad that you plugged on the floor, or was that for Nintendo?
It was Nintendo.
Okay, looks like the capture's going. We're still rolling, so whenever you're
Okay. So here it is.
I'm sorry. I'm so sorry.
I thought you were going to start leaving the building. I'm sorry.
Do
I'm
we
so
want,
sorry.
Do you want to...
Oh man, how long have we had that stupid water bottle on the table in front of Keith's face? Sorry. Was it the whole time?
Yeah.
Yes.
Jesus Christ. Was it bad?
Should I take it away now?
Yeah, take it away.
Could you like not in the future?
I'm sorry, I didn't notice.
What makes you like this game so much?
It was just so queer, it was just so weird and quirky. It was just so weird and quirky, and I was really into that kind of stuff. It had a lot of... Do I need to restart?
I'm so sorry.
It was just so queer.
It was just
so queer. On the episode when we were, I'm gonna sneeze. Doing the Trump faces.
There you go.
I was doing that earlier. I was like, you know. Maybe the show ends like Hoffman, where it's just bloodied mess in the studio, and you just pull out your ABO mask.
And then like a very slow track out from the set.
Yes.
Yeah.
While a bunch of people in the audience giggle. Everyone knows
That was awesome. That was the intended effect.
It's like, surprise, we just played an hour-and-a-half joke on you.
Yeah. Oh, the giggling was what, us?
Yes.
Yeah, right.
That was us. We were like laughing while Hoffman was dead, and like the audience was silent.
I remember that now. Yeah, they were like, what the is going on?
Funny thing is, I probably would love Bequest.
Really?
Yeah.
After all that?
Absolutely. Yeah, after all that. That was all for the camera.
I definitely would play it on the train.
Push those out of the way. Or don't, if it hurts your balls.
I would rather not.
Yeah, sorry, I forgot.
No problem.
I asked for a vas deferens. But if you have a vas deferens, you'll be more powerful than me.
My butt hurts in these chairs after a while. Come a little bit closer. I'm all
You're right there?
Yeah, I'm good. Thank you.
I don't want to keep to have any troubles.
I don't want his bowls to fall out.
My best.
In a little cafe, just the other side of the border.
Then she started walking her way. She belonged to that man Jose. And I knew, yes I knew I should run. But then I heard her say, come a little bit closer, you're my kind of man. So big and so strong, come a little bit closer. I'm all
Tell us when
alone.
you said it, Jay. Okay. I want to look at some of the incredible player's guides and your incredible book, some great player's guides and books. These books are just incredible. First party ones are excellent. They're fabulous books, which is a great book. But we still have some incredible ones to take a look at. We have your incredible book.